You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to episode 479 of the fabulous Peltoncast, sponsored by our friends at Pagliacci Pizza. I'm your co-host, Kevin Pelton.
And I'm Tristan Carcino.
And we're coming to you in separate locations. This week, I'm in Seattle, Washington, home of the four-time WNBA champion Storm.
And I'm coming to you from Redmond, Washington.
They're still the four-time champions. You can't take that away. The Seahawks aren't that good either.
Whoa! Hey, we don't know that. Coming to aren't that good before the season starts? Don't do the preview pod before the pod. Thank you.
Well, that's not really what this week
over
is.
Right there. It's a lock. Over.
That's coming soon. Did you say?
Maybe.
Did you finish the thing?
Red Washington, home of the Super Bowl 48 champion Seattle Seahawks.
So we are thrilled this week to be joined by friend of the pod, Thurton Pelt brother extraordinaire, and the author of the franchise Legion of Boom, a curated history of the Legion of Boom era. Franchise
I've
Seattle
got
Seahawks.
papers here from our fantasy draft, and I feel like I'm really like at doing business when I have paper at the desk.
In a briefcase. Anyway,
I have notes.
Mike-Shawn Dugar is here this week to join us to talk about the book. And
is he going by Mike-Shawn, not Mike-Shawn?
2005. I mean, that's how he is officially introduced. So,
okay.
He will be joining us later. We're going to start out
you
this
week. Call me by my full Tristanathan. People don't know that. Little known.
We're going to start out with this week's toasts before bringing on Mike-Shawn to talk about the book and about the 2025 Seahawks. And we start this week with a big one. Congrats to Cal Raleigh, who set the all-time record for home runs by a player whose primary position is catcher, with his 48th and 49th in the first 2 innings on Sunday, surpassing Salvador Perez's 48 in 2021.
It did sit right with me having Salvi have this record. This is a Cal Raleigh record, people.
I mean, kudos to him for having it previously. It's certainly not the name you would expect in terms of power hitting a catcher. But then before this season was Cal Raleigh, who could say? And then with his 50th home run on Monday, the big jumper joined Ken Griffey Jr. is the second player in Mariners franchise history to reach that mark.
I really think the incredible piece about it is like, just it feels normal for him to be at 50 home runs. Does that make sense? Like right now in this moment, I'm not like, whoa, that is shocking that Cal Raleigh is at 50 home runs.
Whereas when Gino got to 40 home runs, that still seems kind of shocking to me, even though obviously I knew how many home runs he hit in Arizona.
Why that doesn't seem shocking to me either, because he's blew past 40 home runs. Thank you. I want to talk about him in a second, but the 50 home run seasons, like for us as kids, that was something like, that was an incredible season to have, when there was
define as kids.
I'm thinking basically like mid-90s, when the record really mattered, when the Maris record mattered.
So
because I don't think it matters as much. I do think prior to 1998, and then that kind of changed.
American League record. Look, Cal Raleigh is going for the American League record.
The American League record does matter. I think the problem is it was broken a little bit too recently. Like the Maris record stood for long enough that it really felt important. And it also was kind of like, we don't know if this will happen in our lifetime. And then, it was just blown by relatively recently after that. But like when Junior was at 45 home runs in the season of record, that was a massive number. And then when he got to
was at Mike-Shawn's book reading on Monday, discussing this with Zach Jabal, their Pelton brother.
When he got to the 56 home runs, I remember looking at that one and just being like before the last series of the season and being like, okay, if he goes nuts and hits a home run in every at bat, we could possibly get to 61, 62, something like that. But now Gino being at 50 in August is like, if this would have been 1994 and this was happening, we would have been levitating. So excited about it. Now it's just like, Cal has 50 home runs. Of course he does. But that's also a testament to just how good he's been this season.
Right. Why wouldn't he have 50 home runs? I would say 94 is the Griffey season to me, where it really felt like something, because he had the record for most home runs through the month of June. It'd be interesting to know, because I believe the last game of that season was August 12th. I don't know how many games the Mariners actually played. Like how Griffey compared to Cal's pace at that point of the season. He finished with 40 in 111 games. The Mariners actually played 112 that strike shortened season.
And what are they at right now?
More than that, they have 28
Okay.
games left in the season. So I
I mean, the
believe that means they have played
back-to-back
134.
56s was obviously extraordinarily impressive from Griffey, and I think it's obviously within reach for Cal to break that Mariners number, even if he doesn't break the American League number. I don't like when people talk about it where they're like, "This will happen." Broadcasts do that all the time, and I'm like, we don't know the future. People like I don't want to talk about anything as if this is an inevitability because that tomorrow is not promised. But
Cal had 42 through the equivalent point of the season, so he was ahead of Griffey's pace.
a little bit ahead of that pace. But being at 50 right now in August is pretty extraordinary.
It is. All right, next up, congrats to the Mariners and Cal Raleigh on securing the inaugural Vetter Cup with Monday's win over the Padres. So we talked about this back when the Mariners first announced it jointly with the Padres during spring training. It is we can debate whether it's a cup. The actual trophy is a guitar that Eddie Vedder played before it was presented.
I mean, we can't debate whether that's a cup because it's not a cup.
Again, this is the thing I discussed with Zach on Monday night. He pointed out that you definitely can drink out of a guitar. So it's plausible. No one has drunk out of it that I can tell, and it seems unlikely that people would want to do that with this customized guitar that is designed with symbols of both Eddie Vedder and the teams. And then Eddie was in attendance for Tuesday's games to present Cal Raleigh with, I forget what the term was, but the MVP.
I don't think you can drink out of this guitar. Like you'd have to fit the liquid.
I don't know any technical guitar terms, so I do not want to say anything more, but lest I embarrass
no opening
myself.
to drink out of.
It's
not an acoustic guitar.
I mean, okay. I suppose, yes, an acoustic guitar you can drink out of.
I think you would be hard pressed to drink out of this guitar.
It's certainly
but also,
not a
just because you
cup.
could drink out of something doesn't make it a cup. This isn't a hot dog as a sandwich situation.
Are we sure about this? I mean, if
I could put liquid in this candle, but that doesn't make it a cup.
I guess
does it? I don't know. Might.
Not all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Is that where we're getting at here?
This piece of wood that I have has a little crevice that I could put liquid in and drink from. I don't think that makes it a cup. But that's fine. I mean, I'm willing to expand the definition of things that are called cups. I also don't care about this at all.
You have made that very clear, I would say.
I have been very on the record as saying, and it felt like on the broadcast, the other person who didn't care about it was Eddie Vedder.
See, I didn't see him actually on the broadcast.
He was just like so nonplussed about the whole situation.
That's very funny.
I feel like maybe Eddie Vedder was trying to like cool guy this, and I'm just like, I don't know if this is the moment to do that.
Also, please, when you're talking about him, refer to him by his full. I know, Ed. His full name, and I didn't use this on first reference, is my neighbor Eddie Vedder.
Why? Because he lives in West Seattle.
He lives strikingly close to me.
Is this just a flex where you're trying to say like
no, because it's not like, I mean, it's a lovely area. Happy to be where I am. It's not a place where you're like,
look who has the wealth to live next to Eddie Vedder. That's right. ESPN senior writer Kevin Pelton. Not a junior writer. That's versus money, baby.
It is not a place that you would expect Eddie Vedder to live. I guess put it that way. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you on that one. But he is my very near neighbor. That is all I can tell you about that.
Okay. Well, that's really great for you.
And for Eddie Vedder.
To be neighbors with you?
Yeah. I'm a great neighbor. What's not to like? He's not that close. Congrats to Danny Musovsky.
He's not that close? Have you looked?
There's a place. Apparently he has multiple places, but one of them is like down the hill from me.
They're probably in Chicago where he actually wants to be, not San Diego or Seattle.
Oh, congrats to Danny Musovsky, who on Sunday became the 8th player to score a hat trick for the Sounders in an MLS match. A very impressive performance there for Danny Musovski. I originally had on here that we're wishing get well soon to Jalen Polk, given that he's apparently set to undergo surgery that could end his second NFL season. Caleb McGarry also on season-ending IR, so a tough couple of weeks here for Husky alums in the NFL, I would have to say.
Keep working, boys, and you'll get to live next to Kevin Pelton.
Again, many people plausibly could live near me. It's just funny that it is such a famous person in such a nondescript location, I guess I would say. So, all right. With that, it's time for your favorite segment.
Oh my God.
No,
I'm reading the comments on the Padres and Mariners post. The top comment is, why they spelled Vetter wrong, for what it's worth. I don't like criticizing people for spelling grammar on the internet. Why Eddie Vender? He's from Illinois. What's the relation with SD? And the comments are like, not, I was expecting them to have like a lot of effusive, just being like, oh yeah, it was like Eddie lived in San Diego for a while before moving to Seattle. He lived in SD as a child. And I was like, I thought somebody would come in with some like real facts on Eddie and San Diego, but it turns out that it's just a place he happened to live for a little while. I think we should go back to the cups that I made because I think they're pretty dead on. We need to open up. That's the thing. I'm so fine with the Eddie Vedder Cup if we have a lot of cups. This should be like the Notre Dame schedule with regards to cups. We make statues for basically every player who's played for the team. Why don't we have cups with way more teams, especially like American League West teams? We should have a cup with the Astros.
I feel like Michigan has way more cups than Notre Dame does. Does Notre Dame have that many cups?
Notre Dame has rivalries with a lot of teams.
But named rivalries?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have
this
to
should be like Midwest football. How about that?
Okay, that's fine.
Cups are good. That is what I'll say. So I am pro the concept. I mean, John Harbaugh, I can't remember who the team was when he and Jim Harbaugh too, in fact, is the one I'm talking about. When he started at San Diego, right? He made a cup against, I can't remember who the rival was, but he was like, this is the team we want to beat every year. That's our goal. And I was like, hell yeah, Jim Harbaugh. I love this idea that you're focusing on it as like an extra bonus. For baseball, maybe we stop honoring players, maybe more cups.
All right, I guess you're right about Notre Dame. They do play for a lot of they have 6 different trophies that are in play.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Cups. Right?
Michigan.
We have a rivalry with the A's, don't we?
It's kind of funny that Michigan and Ohio State do not play for any sort of trophy or cup, even though that's their actual rivalry. Michigan has
it's kind of different.
3.
You don't need it in the same way.
All right, I concede this argument too. Yes. The Apple Cup was a relatively recent addition to this, I think, in the
when we don't even have with the team from down south, we don't have a cup or anything. It's just a rivalry. You know? Can we name that?
We did name it.
What did we name it?
The Taco Time Cup.
Okay. I don't know.
It's
the
birthplace of the 2 taco times.
It was Eugene, Oregon?
Yeah, the other Taco Time was born in Eugene. Our Taco Time was born in Seattle. Like,
see, I don't know if I like this because I feel like it sort of gives them like they started the thing and then we perfected it.
I guess they did play for the Huskies and Cougars did play previously for the Governor's Trophy starting in 1934. The Big Apple Trophy didn't begin until 1963.
Okay.
So that's been your history of cups and rivalries.
More cups. I am pro cups.
Well, as we said at the top, thrilled to welcome back to the pod Mike-Shawn Dugar, and for the first time is the author of the franchise Seattle Seahawks, a curated history of the Legion of Boom era. You got it there. I've got it. You got it there over your left shoulder. You've been telling us about this book when you've been coming on in the past. How exciting is it to finally have it done and out there in the world?
Yeah, it feels outstanding, really stupendous. All the good adjectives. It really does. It feels like all of them at once because they don't hit you all it's kind of hitting me in waves, you know. Like I felt a certain day the morning I woke up after I turned in the manuscript. Then I felt a different day. I felt different when I got the manuscript back about 6 months later and got to read that. It was almost like I was reading it for the first time. You know, then I did a readout with my wife, and that felt different to hear it out loud, you know, reading it to someone. When I finished the epilogue, which ends with a conversation between Pete Carroll and I, that conversation is very fresh. That was 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. So I had a different feeling when I finally got that done, because that one was when the book was really, really done, you know. And then I got a different feeling when the advanced copies came to me in the mail, and I opened the box, you know, and pull them out and get to get my hands on it. Then I get a different feeling on release day, you know. And then I get a different feeling every time someone tweets me or sends me a DM or a text with a picture of the book saying they got their copy. You know, it's just it's every good feeling. It really is. I can't think of enough adjectives to describe how good it feels.
See, I got a little of that when we did the Pro Basketball Prospectus series and had stuff in print. But the difference was I started working that on that in like August, and it was done in out to everyone like by the start of October. So it was all compressed into like a 2 month period. To have it over the extended period that you were researching, interviewing, writing the book, and then 6 months, wow, from when you turned into the manuscript until you got it back, like that's a lot more patience that's required.
Yeah, and I'm selfishly is the wrong word, but so as you guys probably know, we did an NFL Top 100 book at the Athletic, and it's everyone had to do a feature on someone. If you're someone on the team you cover made it, you had to do it. And I did the Walter Jones one. I just did not feel good about it at all because you know I was 13 when first off I was like 5 when the Seahawks drafted Big Walt, so there's
This,
that.
this is just making us feel old, Mike Shot.
Yeah, I was sorry. Yeah, I was 13 when the Seahawks go to the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 40, and I think 16 when Big Walt retires. So I was like to ask me to like, oh, you're the Seahawks guy, write the Big Walt chapter. It's like, okay, well, let's read the room here. I think we employed Randy Mueller at the time. If we didn't, I know we employed Mike Sando. So which I'm not one to really say no to like, you know, I'm a company man in that way. You ask me to write the Big Walt chapter, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. And then so obviously that then got turned into a book. So I didn't know that was gonna get turned into a book actually. I thought it was just a project we were doing. So I bring that up to say that's like the first time I've been in a book. And I was like, the story itself is fine, but it's like that's not the first time I wanted to be like involved in a book, you know, like writing about a player that I've never seen play, you know, and a good player too. It's like that other people have seen play, you know. So not that I haven't seen Big Wall, but you guys get the point. Like,
Yeah, it's
t-
also a
tw-
lineman. Like there's going to be a difference when you're watching him when you're 13 for
yeah,
an
you know,
offensive lineman than almost any other position.
how many 12-year-olds know how good Trent Williams is right now? You know, even if you're
Yeah.
like a diehard Niners fan.
Grinding that tape.
You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe they are grinding now. You never know. But like, it's just it turned out good. But I was just really not happy about it. And because I hadn't watched Big Walt, I took my angle for the story was to write about the scouting of him and the drafting of him, since that was a big pivot point in the franchise. I think that was the first draft where Paul Allen was the
Yep.
owner as well, and right after they almost moved to California. So it just felt like a significant pivot in drafting him in Sean Springs, I believe. So I kind of took that angle. I talked to Randy Mueller, some scouts, and kind of got like the leading up to the moment story. And then I read some of the other top 100 entries. All of them are just like, here's how great the guy was. And I'm just like, oh, damn. So now it looks like I didn't understand the assignment either
I think it's a
in
way
this
cool.
book.
Like it has been talked about how good Walt Jones is. This is not having read it, obviously, but like telling the story from a different perspective and from a more organizational perspective, I think is more interesting than just being like, look at his lead blocks, you know, look at this pancake block. To me, that's
Right.
you're telling a story more than like the performance is one thing and there's like it's part of a greater story, but how the process for them getting there, I think is the exact right way to tell it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that I hope I don't know how many people read our top 100, but I was like, this is my first time in a book. Come on, man! Like I said, I think it turned out all right. But yeah, I didn't feel great about it. The only thing I was like, at least I'm not the guy who had to write the OJ chapter because that was very difficult. By our Buffalo writer Tim Graham, he actually got sit down with OJ for that too, in Vegas over drinks. It was just nuts. But I wouldn't. I said I'm a company man. I would have for sure turned down drinks with OJ if they had said, "Mike, can you write the OJ chapter? We got exclusive. Just go meet him at the Wynn in Vegas." And I'm
Oh
like,
my God.
no, absolutely not. Yeah. So I guess if there's nothing else, maybe there's just like me and Tim are the two people who maybe didn't really follow the theme of the other 98 people who are written about.
Wow,
Actually,
that's
that would have been great though if it was just an OJ Simpson like straight profile strictly about his playing career. No
yeah.
acknowledgement of anything else.
It was so weird how he did. We don't gotta spend time on it, but it was just there's a line in there where OJ just says he didn't do it, and it's just like, what? I
That's
think we had like
incredible.
1,000 comments on that story too. Like it was understandably polarizing piece there in our NFL. I would have just skipped him. I would have said number 40 is OJ. Next.
Yeah.
Turn the page to read about number 39. Yeah, I just skipped that. And everyone
Uh,
would have understood, to be honest.
but no, having a book in place, it's sort of like your debut album, kind of, like feeling it, holding it, like opening up that box, getting to look at it, just being like, wow, this is a thing that I worked on for this many months. And then like all of the different pieces, and then actually having it in hand, and then seeing the process of people like judging it, evaluating it, buying it, going to the readings and stuff like that. It really is like a completely unique experience. So I think it's pretty exciting to have been at that place and to have told the story that um, of a really important time, probably the most important time in Seahawks history still.
Yeah,
Yeah,
outside of them coming back from Paul buying the team and keeping them here, probably yeah, the most important other than the inception of the team. But yeah, I think those are probably the three biggest times, and all of those are not nearly as fun to revisit as the Legion of Boom era.
yeah, you sort of told the story on Monday at the book reading about how you landed on this era specifically as your topic, and sort of relate that for people.
Yeah, they initially Triumph, that is, shout out to them, the publisher. They reached out. The franchise Seattle Seahawks is just a part of a series of books that are about the history of each team. Zach Berman, my colleague at the Athletic, did the Eagles one. There's a few others, and they sent me the Yankees and the Red Sox, and I think the Niners one as examples. And I read most, I skimmed through most of them, but I think I read the Yankees one almost in full in a PDF form. And I was just like, I'm not doing this. I was like, I just can't. I was like, seriously, I'm just not about to just pretend I should write a book that includes anything more than a couple sentences about Kenny Easley, or Steve Large, unless I could go, sit down with some of the people involved. But I was like, I signed they think they called in like June of 2023, and my daughter was born in July of 2023. So the idea of like, okay, let me chase down all the people who knew Chuck Knox, and then let me go chase down like Largent, it was probably not that hard, but and all these people to ultimately give them a couple pages, because the Seahawks are a young franchise kind of, but if you're out in my mind, I was like, if you're gonna do it, you got to really do it. And I didn't see these people play, so I'm also refreshing myself too at the same time. I was like, that's too much work in this time frame with a newborn. And then I was like, okay, cool, this is perfect. I'll just cut it right to the to when they went to the NFC West in 2002, because I think the year before I had done the another project at the Athletic where we had to do like a realignment stories. So for my story, I did something about when they went to the NFC West, because I think they were the only team to change conferences at the time. So it was a big deal that the company was like, okay, your Seahawks story has got to be good, blah, blah, blah. And I talked to people who were involved in the rivalries, Dave Wyman, Steve Rabel, people who are still around the team about, hating the Broncos, hating the Raiders, stuff like that. So some of that was still fresh in my mind a year later. I was like, oh, okay, let me go about 2002 to now. And then I really sat down and did like a rough outline of my phone. I was like, oh, no, never mind. Even that, just like, I'm going to sell short too many people to get this word count in. I think they wanted about 90,000 words max. And I just knew this is not going to work. It's just not. So I told him, hey, man, can I just do the Pete Carroll era? Just let me do that. Like, and I was like, I know it's not a history of the team, but I can make it better than just, okay, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That would just not have been a great way to
Yeah.
write a Seahawks history to me. So it was really cool to they agreed pivoted. I'm very curious how many of the other books in the series look like this now that I did it this way. Hopefully, it's received well because the goal ultimately was to give the people depth who deserved it. And it would have been so hard, I thought, to do that with like both Sean's, Marshawn and Alexander, all the DBs involved, both coaches. I thought it would have been really hard to encapsulate all of Holmgren and Pete in that time frame. With that, yeah, it would just been. I just act like Jim Mora didn't happen, which I feel like Seahawks fans are probably okay with. So,
it's important sometimes to remember your mistakes so you don't repeat them.
Yes, that is true. Yeah. So that in short, yeah, I just really wanted to give these guys depth, and I thought the more I researched, Cam Chancellor was the first chapter I researched, and I was just like, yeah, this is the right call because Cam is far more than Cam's a perfect example. If you do a history of the Seahawks, which they're kind of doing now with the 50th anniversary of the team, if you just do a history, Cam Chancellor gets like 2 pages, and you just talk about the hits, and that's it. That's all you really have time for, in a history about the full team, 50 years. Even if you crunch it down to 20 years, Cam Chancellor's pages go from like 2 to 5. I'm like, I just can't do that. Can't do that to Cam. Can't do that to Earl. Can't do that to Doug. Doug probably would barely get any ink. And if you did the whole franchise history, in 90,000 words. So yeah, that's kind of how I landed on that, and I felt good about it. That's something that the feedback I've gotten that's been people who haven't even read it in full yet. Just that part of like, yeah, that was the right call. I knew it was. I didn't need people to tell me that, but it's been good as part of the feedback. People would be like, yeah, man, that was the depth is cool to see, as opposed to just here's 3 pages on Sean Alexander's records and maybe a quote or two from Matt Hasselbeck. Here you go. Like that wouldn't have felt good to write.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to all the players you're talking about, one of the guys you go deep on is Ricardo Lockett is kind of a fascinating example of this Pete Carroll era, is one of the many undrafted free agents. You talk about John Schneider's letter to him, along with maybe the more famous letter to Doug Baldwin Jr. to get them to sign as undrafted free agents. And he's the ultimate example, I think, of somebody who, yeah, there's no way in a Seahawks history book or even a modern Seahawks history book, you're going to be able to talk about Ricardo Lockett in the same way that you can in the context of his role in this specific era.
Yeah, I think Brandon Browner too. I think both of them are really good examples, and they're both at the center of the biggest play in franchise history. At least with the big, maybe Sherman's the tip is maybe, but I think the ripple effects of the interception make it a bigger play in franchise, certainly a more impactful play, I think. And so BB and Ricardo, for different reasons, are at the center of it. And I do think I personally felt you needed to go deep on them, particularly BB. BB is Brandon Browner is as much the soul of the Legion of Boom as Sherm to me. As someone who I've never met BB, he was cutting stuff while I was still in college, but just from talking to the guys who have played with him and who still talk to him and keep up with how his kids are doing, like he was just as important to the inception of it, to the attitude of it. He was signed before Sherm was. Like the first like big corner they got was Brandon. To make that whole thing shake. So yeah, guys, I'm glad you mentioned Ricardo as well. Yeah, when I think of the people that probably would not have even been mentioned for more than a paragraph or two had I gone a different route. Brandon sticks out for me as the number one, and yeah, Ricardo is probably number two on that list. And I just don't think you can tell the story of this era without talking about those guys and who they were as people, because I think it really impacted the whole makeup of the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of my big takeaways. And obviously, we're going to get back to the end of Super Bowl 49. Lot to say there. It was shocking because I had thought that it was canceled after they got down to the 2 yard, after the Jermaine Kearse catch, pretty much that they had just, my TV went off. I had no idea. So it was really distressing to learn what I learned from this book. But my big takeaway from this is, so the baseball writer Bill James once wrote that every strength is a form of a weakness. And that was kind of my takeaway from this, that all of these guys who were part of this era had these amazing strengths that allowed them in many cases to have kind of unlikely rises to the NFL, or in, Pete Carroll's case is someone who had been written off as an NFL coach. Like, oh yeah, sure. He had a lot of success in college, but that shit won't work in the NFL, all those sorts of things. And these guys had these amazing strengths And those strengths were also, in many cases, the weaknesses that led to the undoing of this era and how much everything kind of fell apart after that play. Whether it's the competitiveness of some of the players and their inability to turn it off at times, the constant optimism of Pete Carroll, the relentless belief of Russell Wilson, and how all those things also ended up ultimately working against them in Seattle.
Yeah, I think with the Legion of Boom guys, so just stay with the secondary guys, that really stands out, honestly, is because they they believed they were the best, and they just believed that so goddamn strongly, and they were so loyal to people who believed in them. And that's why the Super Bowl felt like betrayal, the one they lost. They wouldn't have felt like that, I don't think, if Pete hadn't loved them up so much, and cared for them and brought the best out of them and told them it was okay to cross the line a little bit. Like Sherm couldn't let the Super Bowl go and probably still hasn't, because it wasn't just that they lost the game, like they all kind of they just it was a letdown, they just felt betrayed, and that to feel betrayed you had to trust, and they were taught to trust. Those guys trusted each other and loved each other and believed in each other, coach included. So I think it really stands out with the LOB, and I think that in Russell it also stands out quite a bit that the thing that made I think with Russell was not as much as tied to the Super Bowl, although like maybe a quarterback who wasn't as confident in his abilities like changes the play call maybe. But I just have a hard time seeing any quarterback being like, I don't want to throw the game winning touchdown pass, in the Super Bowl. That's just I think I cut Russ some slack there. I'm not changing that call either. I'm about to throw that thing. Maybe I throw it to somebody else, but we're throwing. If coach says we're throwing. But I think we're with Pete and with Russ as it ties to Pete is where that really shows up for me. Like what made them so alike is why they couldn't coexist in the end. That really the I wouldn't say what made them so alike in using this analogy, but the two analogies I like to use as a movie guy is like I, Robot and Eagle Eye, the movies. Like the machine, like we built the machines, and the machines we coexisted, and the machines got to be on like, oh, you guys are fucking Earth up, so let's take over because you don't know what you're doing anymore. That was the theme in iRobot for sure, and then it also in the Eagle Eye movie with Shia LaBeouf. It was just the machines got to thinking, huh. So you guys do this with your waste. You're always at war. Like you treat certain people like it was just like, oh my goodness, the self-assessment of the humans was just like, oh, you guys are fucking this up. I know you guys created me, but now I'm student surpass master type of thing, and that's what happened with Pete and Russ, and it was inevitable. As I was writing the book, even knowing how it ended, the era, like even if I didn't know, just researching it, I could have told my future self, oh, this is how this ends. Maybe not like the Super Bowl interception part, but the idea that like, oh, these guys, like inmates running the asylum feels a little racist, but like whatever's a step down, that's more politically correct in that. Like it just felt like they were just gonna all overtake Pete because he empowered them almost to be just the best version of whatever they were. And for some of those guys, as we learned, that was just too much. You can't empower Marshawn that much because he's gonna march to the beat of his own drum. You can't empower Russ that much. Like he's over here asking, like, okay, which linemen are we drafting? What are we doing with this? Russ used to call plays during preseason games. Like he just had he just there was too much power, to quote a Kanye line there. And then Sherm and all those guys were the same way, maybe mostly Earl and Sherm, where it was just like you can't empower those guys to a certain extent because eventually they're just gonna overstep to the point where you just can't have them anymore. And in the NFL, every guy needs to feel like they're one of 53. That's just very important to make the machine work. The minute one guy thinks he's above that, like Russ did, it's over. It's a wrap. Or even Marshawn. Even as soon as you feel like, oh, I don't have to practice, I think there's a quote in there. Marshawn, yeah, a couple guys told me Marshawn before the playoff game against the Vikings, 2015, walked in the training room, was like, yeah, dog, my shit hurt. I ain't going. It ain't good to go to the playoff game. Like, what? For better or worse, Marshawn moved like he was above the 53. And you just can't have that. That's just unsustainable, whether it's Marshawn Russ. And it was very foreseeable with how those guys were brought up, how they were taught when they got to Seattle, how they were loved when they got to Seattle. And then once they tasted success, fame, and then got to analyzing the makeup of the situation. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm bigger than this. Or this guy's not bigger than this. Or what's up with this gray haired guy? He's bugging out now. Like it was inevitable that there would be no nice soft landing for that. It was always going to come crashing down too. And I really think I told Pete this. I was like, it's crazy you guys even won 10 games as many times as you did. Like in any other, so many versions of this where they honestly just lose to Atlanta in 2012 and then that's it. Honestly, like these guys were just so volatile. Like they're honestly, those guys feel like they should have won 3 Super Bowls in a row. But as someone who researched this now, I think they're lucky that they got the one and didn't kill each other, in the process.
Yeah, I mean, 2015 is fascinating in that regard because it started so poorly and you had, the bad feelings from Super Bowl 49. And yet the second half of that season, they were maybe as good as at any point during the stretch. Certainly offensively, they were better than at any other point in this stretch. So it was a remarkable testament to how good they were, even when they weren't getting along. Uh, there's been a lot of stories written. You were part of one at The Athletic. We had, a big one at the ESPN sort of about Super Bowl 49 and everything that happened and the rift that was created between the defense and Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson in the wake of that. I think, I would look at that as if we're thinking about this as a tree, what actually happened, like the fallout is the tree that we see above the ground. And people like traced maybe, a little bit down to the trunk in those stories previously. You went all the way down to the roots, as you're saying, to show how like this was not just a product of what had happened in the few years before that with the Seahawks. It's a product of, as you said, like who these guys were as people and how they were raised and everything that made it inevitable.
Yeah, I think, man, what a gift and a curse from Russell Wilson's perspective to play for Pete Carroll and with Marshawn Lynch. Like without those two guys, he doesn't have a case for the Hall of Fame, probably. And I think he'll probably get in. He's like a 10-time Pro Bowler. But because he played with guys who were so authentic in themselves every day, the fact that he was not stood out like a fucking sore thumb. To those guys, I'm not even saying that to me. I wasn't around Russ in those intimate moments to really call him out on the BS, but the guys who were there were. And they were just like, this guy's a phony, and they saw through that. And there's probably a lot of quarterbacks who are like that. Quarterback's kind of the politician position of the NFL in a lot of ways.
Certainly when you're talking about one player above the 53, like my first thought was the whole Bill Belichick, like do your job ethos, but then they also had Tom Brady and a lot of these same things happen with Brady and Belichick.
Yes, exactly. The Tom Brady way or the TB12 method or whatever that shit's called. That's above the 53. But I think Russ would really hurt him is something that really, when I talk about inevitable, that was super inevitable. Because I went to school with guys who were very clearly putting on like a front about who they were, or at least it was perceived that they were, which almost just makes it true anyway, to be honest. And Pete and Marshawn are perhaps two of the most authentic people in the history of the NFL. Like what you see is what you get from those two. Their personalities, the way they are. You just never feel like you can not like them for whatever reason, but you just never feel like they're like BSing you ever. You just feel like you're getting them. And with Russ, it was almost literally the complete opposite. Guys just never felt like they were getting Russ. And fans could see it too, but they just didn't care as much because he's winning Pro Bowls, all this stuff. But those guys were just they could see it. And I think it could always be seen no matter what team he went to. But I think the fact he played for Pete and with Marshawn, it just made it even worse. It kind of expedited the process, I think, personally, because Marshawn, again, is like probably the most authentic guy in like maybe like sports history. It just he's just so him. He's a caricature, but it's just not it's not cartoonish or fake, and it's very, very sincere too and loving. Like when Marshawn talks to you, and it's like he cares a lot. He just says it in ways that people aren't used to hearing it. But he's always like that. And there's a chapter in the book that's just dedicated to just him doing good shit for people. Like but it's all stuff that felt really genuine when it happened in real time, particularly Ricardo Lockett's wallet story. If Ricardo never tells the wallet story, it probably never gets out. I mean, not just because there was only two of them there and the guy driving the sprinter, but because Marshawn would never tell that, really. I don't think so, because he doesn't give a shit to tell that. Ricardo tells that, and that's fine, but Marshawn did stuff like that all the time and never cared. Doesn't care whether people knew. He just wanted the person he was trying to help to feel helped, and that was it. And contrast that with Russ. Does he care about the kids at the Children's Hospital? I genuinely believe he does, 100%. I never thought that was phony. The problem is, I do think you got to get to a certain level of phony with the people next to you for them to even question that. Like that's like the most sincere thing in the world you can probably do is go visit sick kids. And if anybody around you questions whether that's real, people got to really think you're a phony. That's it's not just like you see people taping themselves giving a homeless person $5, something like that. It's like, whoa, why'd you tape yourself? That's a self-satisfying gesture. That's a more easy criticism to make. Get to a point where like, I don't know, man. He goes to the children's hospital on his one day off, but does he really love the kids? And that was a thing, not just among fans or whoever, the guys with him. So yeah, I think it really just did it. It was a gift and a curse. Like I said, Russ is a Hall of Fame case, in large part because he played for Pete and next to Marshawn. And he was a polarizing figure and viewed a certain way in that locker room for other reasons as well. But I think in part because he played for Pete Carroll and next to Marshawn Lynch. Like it was a fascinating relationship between the three of those guys.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so. We can debate kind of the merits in a football sense on winning the game of the Seahawks throwing as opposed to handing the ball to Marshawn Lynch at the 1 yard line in Super Bowl 49. And I'm prepared to discuss that later. But I think what you convinced me of is that if you looked at it from the viewpoint of like what's best for the franchise going forward long term, that was in fact a mistake, that they should have done whatever they could to make sure that Marshawn was that guy because of what it was going to mean in that locker room going forward. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned the 2015 season. They still won 10 games. And that was some of the most dysfunctional stuff. And I probably couldn't even tap into all the dysfunction there, but you had guys not talking to each other, guys not talking to management, guys not talking to coaches, guys not getting along. Cam had clearly lost his way within the Legion of Boom kind of brotherhood there, holding out, missing games. 2010 Cam would have never missed games. Never. Over money? No. But that's what happened when they lost the Super Bowl that way. And I think that I bring up that season because I think if they just run Marshawn 4 times and he doesn't get in, I don't think anyone views that as an act of betrayal. Like no one's like, oh, we should have thrown the slant to Ricardo. No disrespect to Ricardo, but no one would have said that. Maybe you're like, oh, maybe we throw to Doug, or something like that. But or maybe I think a lot of people would have said, why not try like a keeper with Russ or something, zone read action, which is probably what I would have called. But I think the fact that it didn't go to Marshawn and Russ threw a pick on a play they never ran. I asked everybody too when we did an interview. I was like, you guys never ran this play, right? And everybody's like, nope. Even Bev. I was like, you called a play you never ran? He was like, well, we repped it in practice. It's like, that's insane. And anyway, the fact that they gave it to Marshawn or didn't give it to Marshawn was just such a betrayal of everything they had come to know. It was like run the ball, play good defense, be a lead on special teams. That was the circle of toughness, I believe Pete called it. And to do something that didn't involve the circle of toughness, it's like, Pete, what are we doing here? Throwing this slant is not who we are. It's just not. So that felt like a deviation from everything they had been taught to be. Should they have felt that way? I don't know. I try to do my best in the book not to like insert whether to like litigate guys' feelings, just kind of articulate how they felt, because I would have called.
That's what this podcast is for.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I feel comfortable very much saying that like a lot of those guys were just being hypocrites and just didn't like Russell, kind of claiming that he got his own rules, which he did, but like I said, Marshawn did too, and no one cared because they liked Marshawn, they didn't like Russ, and I would have kind of called that out to the guys like, wait a minute, let's just be frank here, you just don't like Russell, which is okay, you don't have to like all your teammates, but yeah, I think the fact that Russ threw that ball and it didn't go to Marshawn. Yeah, there was something defeating about that. I didn't know at the time, and I was in college, I think, when that game happened, that Marshawn wasn't talking to Pete, wasn't talking to John, like was already very pissed. The Kansas City game was a tipping point. They had lost an Arrowhead that year. It was just there was a lot going on there. I think Marshawn was in like a contract dispute too. There was just so much that had happened. There was a lot of internal beef after that Chiefs game as well on the defense,
I
the
don't remember that Chiefs
headsets.
game.
The Chiefs game was a big deal. Marshawn got stuffed a few times in short yardage in that
Well,
game as
okay,
well.
I did want
I,
to bring that up.
well, okay, before then, I just want to ask. I mean, it's so funny because we're talking about this one play in this play call, right? But like, how? And apologies if this is outlined in the book. How much? Like, you're there. You don't know the situation you're going to be in the Super Bowl. They did give him the ball on first down. It wasn't like there was a
Hmm.
going out of their way to not give the ball to Marshawn. I'm sure that nobody who was on the comms, who was in the building, thought that this. They might have thought that this play call was going to be important because they were going to score a touchdown and win the Super Bowl on it. But I can't imagine any of them were looking at it from the perspective of like, this is going to be the play call that is going to define basically our entire careers at this point after that. How much foresight do you think went into it of them being like, we are intentionally not giving the ball to Marshawn because of anything beyond football reasons? Or like even the thought of, is this going to divide the locker room? It feels like something where, like, in that moment, as you're calling the play, you're just like, we think this will work more than all of the other stuff. And maybe they should have been paying attention to those things, but it's almost like it matters so much more because it didn't work. Like we just given so much meaning to this thing because it didn't play. If it's an incomplete pass, we are never talking about that play ever again, probably.
Depending on what happens on third down. But yeah,
It's probably a run, like I feel
yes.
like it's probably
Yeah,
a handoff to Marshawn on third down.
because the situation was that the Seahawks wanted to pass there because to preserve the one timeout they had remaining.
Correct. Yes, which makes sense. I think Pete didn't get enough credit from his players on the math on that. Like, yeah, you needed to throw at least once to maximize it. That's just good football strategy. I don't know why, like reading even old quotes, I was like, well, I don't know why people aren't getting this. That makes perfect sense to me that you tell Bev, because that was Pete's argument, or not argument, but his kind of thing that he cleared up to me, because Bev at one point had said Pete told me throw it. And I'm just like, okay, ran that by Pete, and he's like, "Well, I told him that we needed to throw at least once in within these 4 plays because of the time scores. That sounds a lot more plausible than just a second down, throw it." Pete never really seemed
Yeah.
like the type of guy to tell the OC what to do on any given down in that way. Pete's thing, to my knowledge, obviously I'd never been on the headset, was more so like before a drive, I'm like, "Hey man, let's get the ground game going," or "Hey, let's get such and such involved more." Just little coach things, not like, "Hey, on 3rd and 4, run this."
Yeah.
Just to me from in the research never seemed like Pete's get down. So I can get why Bev would say, "Oh, the boss told me throw it, so I threw it." I
It's
get it.
also the play to throw the ball, right? Like if you're first down, makes sense. They're going to run the ball, right? Like they get to the one.
Well, the question was whether New England was going to use their timeouts, and obviously that's been like mythologized now that Bill Belichick appeared across the sideline and saw confusion among the Seahawks, and therefore decided not to because the reason to throw it on second down instead of third down is if you run it, take the final timeout. Now the Patriots know you're throwing on third down.
Correct. Yeah, the football strategy of it always made sense. It made sense in real time, like when I was on my couch, watching it. That always made sense. But no, I
I
don't
I
think.
I don't think. I mean, it's also credit. Obviously, like Pete Carroll understands clock situations very very well, right? Considering all of those things, and
Yeah,
it's something that like for me there, I don't remember exactly what I was thinking. I probably would have been like, this ball is going to Marshawn. They're at the 1 yard line. Without a shadow of a doubt, I would have been
Oh,
like, the ball is going to Marshawn here.
no, I was thinking in real time it's going to be Russ rolling out with the option to either run or
Well,
throw.
I mean, it's probably a better play call. And again, you can litigate the play call itself. There's so much of these situations where you're like, the decision to pass the ball wasn't necessarily wrong. The play call was probably wrong. Teams make wrong play calls all the time. There's just so much of a magnifying glass on this one particular play because of, probably 1 in 100 outcome, maybe even lower of the outcome of that situation and how the ripple effect that it had throughout the organization. It's kind of funny where I'm like honestly, you kind of need to just like throw up your hands and be like, shit happens ultimately, because I don't think anybody acted like, it's so hard for me to believe that anybody was acting in bad faith in that moment of Bevel, Pete, anybody else, of just being like, and that's kind of the story that gets told after, is like they wanted Russ to be the hero. And I'm like, I really deeply think they just wanted to score a touchdown.
Yeah, no, that was when I talked to Bev. We did a long interview, actually. We talked twice. He's one of the few people I had to double back with just to make sure I was getting this right. Bev defended the play call, and I think he's always going to defend the play call till he dies. He's like, hey, man, go execute, you know? He liked the play call. I don't think they should have called a play they'd never run before.
But then
That
you'd
just
argue
felt
like it's not on tape, like
that was the funky thing, because if you guys remember, the Patriots had like a behind the scenes like doc on the team that won it a year later, and they practiced that play. There's actually footage of them practicing it.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube now.
And Malcolm Butler famously dropped it in that scenario or something like that, right? Like had an opportunity to interception, which is to Tristan's point, like everything has to go perfectly wrong.
yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't get to talk to any Patriots for this because I didn't want to spend that much time digging, but I was very curious, like, how did they know to practice that? Because they had never put that on tape.
Huh.
Yeah,
Huh.
no, I know, right? You get into the conspiracy theories there with the Patriots. Because I watched every game. I found one situation, I think, against the Eagles the year before on Monday Night Football where they run a version of it, not the same, because they didn't run it from a stack. They just run it from a regular alignment. It was the same play. I think I forget who scores on it. I have it somewhere in my computer. But so they did run a version of it before, but never that exact plays. But anyway, that was the thing Bev was really upset about. Is how could these guys think I would betray them that way? How could they think that I would care enough or think about that in real time?
It's just the story gets told, like a thing happens and then the story comes in
But
after.
but I think to Mike-Shawn's point about how do you get to the point where you're questioning Russ going to visit kids at the children's hospital? Like,
oh yeah,
how did they get to the point where they believed this? And it's
Bingo.
because of
Yep.
all these things that happened, and it went back years.
Yeah, I do think that the one thing in real time that guys did feel, or at least they say they felt, was that running that play to Brandon's side was probably a bad idea. Like just because they knew BB. That was the thing. Like guys who had to run, even Jermaine, I think he did an interview on KJ's podcast a couple years ago where he's like, yeah, man, I would make sure I make this block, like because Brandon's strong as hell. This could go wrong. He obviously didn't think it would get picked, but there was definitely possible really bad outcomes there with that play. I think also in real time, and if guys were going to throw, they love Ricardo Lockett. That's probably not who they would have drawn that up for. If anybody, you throw up like a goal line fade for Chris Matthews at the time.
Chris Matthews. Yeah.
Yeah, which sounds nuts. Like dude,
I mean,
10 years later, or whatever.
3 yards in the game. Like,
yeah,
it's shocking. One target in the game. It's shocking
yeah,
to see.
one target. It's crazy. Now we're getting away from the schematics of it, which is fine. But talking to Doug's perspective on the Super Bowl play was like, if I was gonna guess who was the most upset, I would have guessed Mike-Shawn, right? He doesn't get the ball, and Mike-Shawn, as he has articulated a lot, which man, this would really bug me. You can tell it bugs Mike-Shawn, but not a way that like he's willing to really, really show. But I get it. Is now he's the guy who didn't get the ball in the Super Bowl. Like when people see him on the street and stuff like that, they just bring it up. It's like, why ain't give you the ball? And he's gonna get that probably till he dies. Whereas Doug doesn't.
Yeah.
But that almost makes it worse from Doug's view. It's like, why don't people think I was good enough that I should have gotten the ball almost? Like Doug had that kind of complex. I don't know if he does now, but at the time for sure. Just watching Doug and listening to Doug, he like when we had him on our Seahawks Man to Man podcast, Doug like encouraged us to go watch the film of the game. So I did. And I was like, oh man, I would hate Russ too. Russ doesn't even complete a ball for like the whole first quarter. It's really, really awful quarterbacking actually in the first half of that game. But and then the one target Doug does get, he catches a touchdown and gets a penalty for pretending to shit on the ball because he was shitting on Darrelle Revis. But then Revis's counter is like, I got picked off by the ref in the back of the end zone. Like you weren't open, dude. Like the ref got in my way. And Revis complains in real time too. But yeah, Doug probably could have told you in real time, if we're gonna throw, we should throw to me. Luke Wilson had done a few interviews. Like in real time, he was like, huh, that's interesting. Like Luke even had an ideal play call from the run. I think it was 94 buck, which I believe is one of the touchdowns, I think Russ runs in a touchdown in the Packers game. I want to say in the championship game, I believe. That's the play call he wanted to run. I think it's a zone read.
Yep.
So like Luke was like, oh,
That's what they should
let's
have
run.
called.
Yeah, it's like let's run 94 buck. I remember Luke was like, when we called the play, I was like, huh. Or when they called the personnel, he was like, we don't have buck out of this. What's going on? So there were guys, maybe not no one acting in bad faith, but there were definitely guys who in real time were like, huh, maybe we should not do that. And
Yes.
then they did it. So that compounded it as well. You know, guys on defense were like, huh, why are we in shotgun? You know, there was just so many guys that in real time were like, this is gonna go south. Maybe not that far south, but at the very least, guys didn't think they'd score running that play.
It is funny, like you talking about those defenders and Brandon Browner and Darrell Revis and obviously like Malcolm Butler. And you look at Russ's stat line from the game, where only completed 12 passes, and you're like, yeah, I can tell why. You know, like looking at that Patriots secondary, giving Bill Belichick 2 weeks to scheme it up, Patrick Chung, etc. Like it makes sense to me why Russ didn't have the kind of game that maybe he'd had in some of the previous weeks. But I guess I also am kind of like coming back to the point that you said, where it was like they just didn't like him that much. And I feel
Yeah.
like it was almost always, I feel like even if they win the Super Bowl, I mean, you tell me, right? Like even if they win a Super Bowl, there was going to be something combustible with Russ and the rest of that crew, partially because of personalities, timing, or whatever. But like to me, like the stuff about being like inauthentic or fake or whatever, a lot of times it just boils down to people could do the exact same action. And if you like somebody or you think they're cool, then you're fine with it. And if you don't like them, then it feels gross. And I feel like that's kind of like what was going on with Russ and was probably going to happen with this organization one way or another eventually, and with him as a person one way or another eventually.
Yeah, everyone's convinced they would have, everyone meaning like the players and the coaches, that they would have won a third one if they had won that one. And maybe they were so talented that perhaps they could have. It would have been really tough to beat that Panthers team. That they were really good that year. Even the Cardinals that year were really good. I think I think
The Seahawks did almost beat that Panthers team in the regular season, right? That was the game in Seattle that came down to the final drive. Am I remembering that correctly? In 20
yeah, though the reason I say it would have been tough to beat them that game, I think Cam led like three different 80-yard drives for touchdowns in that game. Like Cam
They were
was just
pretty
on a
good.
smoker. Yeah, he was on a smoker that year. And then he obviously hung, I think, 24 on him
Oh,
in the
that's
playoff
right.
game too.
Greg Olsen touchdown catch with 32 seconds remaining. The Panthers scored the final the Seahawks led that 23-14. Carolina scored back-to-back touchdowns in the final 4 minutes to win it in
And
Seattle.
I think they went the length of the field multiple times too, which was very hard to do against that Seahawks defense. Now the touchdown to Olsen is because of a busted coverage, but I don't think Sherm got the call, or somebody didn't get the call on that side of the field. But I think it would have been hard to beat that Panthers team. I think they would have beat the Broncos though if they did beat the Panthers for what that's worth. But I think they would have had a psychological advantage over Peyton Manning too. He was spooked in that Super Bowl. But yeah, I think to your point, they didn't like Russ's get down. Some guys were getting tired of Pete at that time too. There was just like I said, Marshawn wasn't even talking to these guys at that time. I don't think Marshawn talked to John after that for years. I think they might have just reconciled in like 2019. You know, it was some real beef there. Yeah, I think that it would have been really hard for that to not combust at some point. You know, Kevin brought up the ESPN story by Seth Wickersham. I assume you're talking about
Yep.
that came out in 2017. The lead of that story, the intro, is Sherm telling Russ he sucks, you know, in practice and throwing the ball at him. That was before the Super Bowl loss, you know, which is probably why Seth led with that, which is what I would have led with as well. That just shows you how deep there was already the beef there, you know. And then was the meeting that happened after that practice, you know, and Pete kind of like said, "Hey, you know, take it easy on the QB," you know. So yeah, it was super combustible. It would have been hard to keep that together. I do think that the there was so much finger pointing and just not letting it go that they still could have had a lot more success, I think. Uh, because what in 2016 they actually still make the playoffs. God damn, they were good. But I think they won a division that year too. What a team. I do think that they had enough talent to get more done, but from talking to guys, it was so just palpable in the building of the we can't let this go thing on so many levels that it was tough to overcome. But yeah, even if let's say they score another way and they win and then Russ doesn't win Super Bowl MVP, do they win again? Like maybe, but who knows what that would have done for like Russ thinking he was above everyone else. Like we would have got just his ego might have took the fuck off after a game-winning touchdown pass too in the Super Bowl, beating Tom Brady. Yeah, man. I think also last thing on this, I think it was Sherm who mentioned this to me once that if they had won both Super Bowls, they would have beaten Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and been the best
Yeah.
defense ever, right? Instead of just one of the best defenses ever, which is that one of changes a lot, right? Now you're
Yeah.
just lumped into a bucket of like five versus I think he's right. Whoever told me that, I think it was Sherm. Like, yeah, we're unquestioned the best defense ever. What? Now, yeah, that's probably true. But also, what would that have done for their egos? That might have got nuts. Between Russ being a two-time Super Bowl champ, game-winning touchdown thrower in the Super Bowl, because at that point, Russ would have had a go-ahead touchdown in the NFC Championship, a game-winning touchdown in the NFC Championship, and a game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. And then he would have got paid right after that, which he did. But I almost guarantee he would have got paid more than Rodgers at the time. I think he ended up being paid the second highest QB in the league at the time of his first extension. I would have made sure I got him more than Rodgers if I'm his agent at that point. And then from the defense, I think some of those guys would argue they wanted like guys like Cam were like, all right, give me my money if I'm gonna be around this BS. And that wouldn't have happened if they had won. Maybe. I think there's a very real world where Cam's like, oh, I'm the captain of the best defense ever. Give me my money.
Yeah.
I think there's both scenarios are plausible, equally plausible, I would argue. Without knowing Cam super well, I would make that case. So yeah, it was combustible in a lot of ways, and I don't think it's crazy as it sounds, I don't think winning again might have made it any easier because
Yeah.
they would have all just felt like they were just the biggest badasses in the world, and the worst thing is they'd all been right.
Yeah.
But at least it would have been a better memory of the whole era, I suppose. Okay, now we're going to get to the part where I am going to litigate guys' feelings because some of them do not hold up to deeper statistical scrutiny. So the first thing is like this is how you know real Seahawks fans in that era. If they know that the Seahawks were actually very bad at short yardage running, despite Marshawn Lynch's ability to break tackles. I looked this up on StatHead. 2012 through 2013, if you look at third and fourth and 1 or 2 yards to go, the Seahawks ranked 29th out of 32 teams in that span in converting runs. And Marshawn specifically, as awesome as he is, 14 of 25, 56% in those scenarios, better than only one team in the league in that point. So that's part of why like the whole like, oh, giving it to Marshawn would have been an automatic touchdown is something that I don't buy.
Oh, Daryl Bevell, was music to his ears, man. For
Well,
real,
look, Bev did nothing wrong.
Bev went through every short yardage play with me that they had in the Super Bowl. He was like, Mike, he got stuffed on this, he got stuffed on this, he got this one. It was almost like it was like talking to a war veteran and just like getting him going. It helped. I think we talked about all that stuff at the end of the interview, so he was just rolling at that point, which was great. And I even asked him if he wanted all that on the record too. I gave him that credit. He was like, "Yeah, man, it's fine." I was like, "Oh, this is great stuff." He didn't say anything inflammatory, but just the rawness. And yeah, he was like, everyone just thinks Marshawn would have just walked in, and I think that also speaks to the disconnect too. Like those guys were acting on emotion and belief and love for one another, and they felt they had something that you just couldn't quantify. And if you're the guy calling the plays, sometimes you factor that in. That's how you could call a pass from John Ryan to Gary Gilliam, right? Like sometimes you just go off of vibes. That's a pure vibes call, right there. Especially down 16 points in the championship. Like, come on, that's pure vibes. Sometimes you're right, your vibes are right, and sometimes they're not. And that was part of the disconnect as well. And I think that also, yeah, you're right about that on the numbers part, because they all just think, yeah. And you know what? I get it though. Numbers aside, I think it was Doug. I might even quoted him in the book. That was like, there's just no way in hell we wouldn't have got Marshawn in the end zone for the Super Bowl. And you know what, man? It's so many guys who just believe they're right and have a point. You know, Bev has a point when he brings up their short yardage
Yeah.
failures, and Doug has a point too. It's not one you can quantify, but it's like, you know what, man? I saw the Beastquake run. You know, I saw Beastquake too, and against Arizona. Sometimes Marshawn just does shit that breaks the math. That is true. That is very true. I think that's also what really brought the house down, the Seahawks house, is that everyone has a point. I think what really hurt, and this was where I really felt bad for Russ, because according to guys who were there at the Hawaii trip that he organized, when everyone's supposed to go up on this mountain and basically say their truth and throw it off the mountain, bonding, all that stuff. Russ's truth was, I would throw it again. And they just didn't want to hear that shit. I'm like, come on, man. This is we're in Hawaii being vulnerable to each other. Like he should be allowed to say his truth there. Do you have to like his truth? No, man, but it just feels like guys didn't accept his truth in that moment, or ever. But and that was Pete's truth too. Pete was on the trip, but I just thought that right there was really. I didn't spend much time on the Hawaii trip in the book, but that part really stood out to me, which is why I included it. It was just like, here you guys are, brothers in Hawaii, on this mountain volcano, wherever the hell, speaking your truth to each other, and you just can't accept another guy's truth. That I was like, yeah, you guys are done. And I can't believe they won 10 games or whatever after that. Like it just everyone had a point. Everyone had their truth, and no one wanted to see anybody else's side. It was the most dysfunctional relationship team wide probably in a while.
Yeah, it's almost like a situation where everyone has their own truth of the play, even though everyone acknowledges what actually happened on it. But the other thing I will say is, like, I do think if you read this book, you come away with an impression that the defense kept Bailey and Russ and the offense out in these playoff games. And another thing I looked at was the EPA in the playoffs for the Seahawks in this span. In 2013, it's funny, the Super Bowl year was the only year the offense wasn't top five in the playoffs. They were ninth that year, and that was the year the defense was just off the charts. Obviously, the NFC Championship game, the way that they handled San Francisco in particular, they ranked number one overall. But in 2012, offense was slightly better than the defense. That's the year the defense gives up the field goal at the end against Atlanta.
It's pre-Cliff Averill and Mike Bennett, obviously,
without question, but possibly the best the best offense of those 3 years. 2014, offense fourth, defense fourth. 2015, offense fifth, defense ninth. It was the defense that kind of really fell apart against the Panthers in that game statistically, although the offense started very slowly. And then
there was a safety, was it, where Russ got his foot stepped on, or a pick that happened, and the goal, like, up against
He
the
threw a
goal
pick
line.
six in the Panthers game.
That was the pick six where maybe somebody stepped on his foot and he threw it up. I can't remember what it was exactly, but.
And then 2016, offense fifth, defense sixth. So that's the one thing I did want to defend the Seahawks playoff offense for the all-time record.
Yeah, there's definitely a interesting record. I do this for a living, right? I go into the locker room, they just lost the game. My job is to talk to as many guys as possible about the same event. And it's so fascinating the answers that I get. This book was just a larger version of that. It was talking to all these guys about these events, and the memories lined up good sometimes, and perceptions of stuff was just different. The one that I'm really curious about, just a singular moment, is the meeting after the NFC Championship game against the Packers. Because, like, it's one thing, I don't think Sherm's a liar per se, but he does remember things how he wants to remember them in the way that serves him. I think pretending he didn't get a handshake from Baker on Monday Night Football is probably like one of the more famous examples. He was just like, oh, he didn't shake my hand at the coin toss, so I took that personally. And then, like, there's like, dude, the game's on ESPN. We can all see he dapped you up. Like we get it. You're in your Michael Jordan, I took the personally era or whatever. But so I say that to say, I don't think Sherm's a liar, but I just think he remembers things how he wants to sometimes, and that's okay. But, like, so for him to say, I think he's one of the guys who said this, I can't remember, but a lot of guys on defense believe that Pete treated their Monday morning meeting after that as if the defense had played poorly, and that the offense came in and saved the day with a touchdown from Russ to Jermaine. And
Yeah,
one of the guys
true.
who said that was Bobby. Like, Bobby, even that was his recollection of the meeting. And I consider just Bobby like the most level-headed person ever. So, like, when he said it, I was like, oh damn, Pete must have been bugging. I really wish that I couldn't spend that much time on it in the book, but I really would have loved to like even just get a video recording of that meeting because that as much as anything was the problem too. That's another reason why I was so combustible. That was before the game. They were just like our own goddamn coach is over here talking like we didn't hold the best offense in the league to 16 points all game, despite our quarterback just hurling picks all over the place. And he's acting like we didn't play well. Now, did Pete actually do that in the meeting? Who knows? But guys felt like he did, which is
Yeah.
the most important. So like that was one of those. Is the perception as bad as it is? Because yeah, you come. I came away, and I watched all these games too. Um, I came away thinking, oh, you guys just really didn't like Russ. Everything is just, oh man. I think I pulled the quote because it was inflammatory, but one guy was like, he's like it was something to the effect of every time he led a game-winning drive, he was the reason we were behind or something like that. Which obviously couldn't have been true every time, but that was just I would have had to relitigate that, and that would have just taken too much time. So, but that type of sentiment, I was like, you guys just hate this guy. Um,
So
I do
that leads me to like Doug makes it clear, I don't know if you said this specifically in the book. You did say it at the book reading on Monday night that Russ was quote unquote the problem.
mm,
Like number one, obviously not that you specifically asked all of the guys this, but like how good do you think they think he was as a quarterback? And then number two, is was there actually a sense that he wasn't preparing hard enough? Because that's such a fascinating disconnect from his public perception.
No, I don't think anyone ever questioned the work ethic or the commitment to winning. I think guys measure that. Like he definitely was like a first guy in the building, last guy out, get the massages, train off season. Like he always practiced. He never missed reps, never missed games. Like that part. Do what he had to do if he got hurt. Played the 1 year with the
Sometimes too
MCL.
much
Yeah.
in
Particularly
21-21.
yeah, 2021. Yeah. I think if you ask like okay, how good did they think he was, that just varies. I think it depends. It depends on the background of the guy. The guys who played with Tavares, I think were acting on emotion a little bit more than talent. Like they would like maybe have preferred Tavares because he did some of the more basic quarterback things like okay, this is a 5-step drop. He hits his back leg on the 5th step and the ball's out. Like there are guys there is an appreciation for the timing of that, particularly in the West Coast offenses, where you're like, I would rather just have that than the guy who does the 3 spins and then throws me a 50-yard bomb. It's like we just can't practice that. That's just hard to do. So it really depends. Like Tavares guys, I think have a different perception of how quarterbacks should be played. I think guys who came from other teams like Cliff came from Detroit, I think played with Stafford for a few years. Like his view is a little different. It's different for all the guys. There were multiple guys on offense though who will tell you just straight to your face, we would have won the Super Bowl with Matt Flynn. Like
That's just wild.
that was like genuinely believe that. Like we'll tell you, yeah, we would have won. So I think that's the answer that always stood out to me that multiple guys say that. It's not a ton of guys, it's not like 30 dudes on the team. But the fact that it was more than one blew my mind. I was like, God damn. It's not like Matt Flynn ever like got busy after he left Seattle either. You know what I mean? Like he didn't end up just turning out to be good somewhere else. He was just out of the league after who knows how many years. So yeah, there were guys who thought that he was no better than Matt, that he wasn't as good as Tavares, and there's guys on there who just like, oh yeah, Russ is great. We won a lot of games with him. He's good in 2 minute. Throws a great deep ball. Like there are guys who liked him too. But I think where you started to play with Russ really matters a lot. Like for instance, if I was to ask Tyler, Tyler would be like, "Oh yeah, Russ is great," because that's all Tyler knew at the time. But now Tyler's played with Gino. Now Tyler's played with what Cam Ward and Drew Lock. Like maybe Tyler would answer differently now. I don't know. I would love to get like DK's answer now. DK's 3 quarterbacks or 4 if you count Drew have now been Russ, Drew, Gino, and Aaron Rodgers. What is how does DK view it now? That would be fascinating to get. But yeah, there was definitely guys in there who just thought he was like, this dude is not that good. Multiple guys kept bringing up that he fumbled to start the NFC Championship game against the Niners. I was like, why you guys won the game? Why are you holding on to that? It was just very, very, very fascinating. And last thing on this, I do think it was very interesting that Jermaine gave me a good like little what if or maybe he said it to KJ and then to me. But they run a play. in the preseason against the Broncos, Matt Flynn throws it to Terrell Owens, and T.O. drops the ball.
Yep.
Um, Russ and Jermaine run the same play later in the game. Jermaine catches it. And they score a touchdown on like I think the next play, and I think Russ starts the next game after that. And there was a fun little what if, like, oh my goodness, what if T.O. catches the ball? Not to say that Russ and Jermaine couldn't have then run the same play, but what if that works out? I like to think that Pete and John weren't just making decisions off of a preseason catch or not, but that was a little fun what if, but it also speaks to like how good did you guys think this dude was? And yeah, some guys were just like, not at all. And yeah, I don't think Doug said that Russ was a problem in the book, but I think I think Doug was caught on camera screaming at the coaches at least 3 or 4 different times in his Seahawks career. And you can't really see what he's saying because there's no audio, obviously, when they show it on TV. But I think all of them were because of Russell. When he's like yelling at Tom Cable against the Giants in 2017, when he's yelling at one of the personnel guys against the Cowboys in 2018. Like I think that every time you see Doug screaming at a coach or someone on the sideline, I think it was all about Russell. So yeah, he has not hidden it very well. He's literally screaming about him on TV, and I think they won all these games I'm mentioning too, which also speaks to like the kind of the relationship there.
Some people work best in chaos. It is funny though. I mean, Doug Baldwin did have very good numbers as a rookie playing with the late Tavares Jackson, but when you talk about like you can't practice Russ running around and then finding somebody downfield, Doug Baldwin was like the single best guy at that. Like that, like that 2000 and the 2015 second half where his chemistry with Russ's chemistry with Baldwin just seemed off the charts. Like it's a bummer that Doug didn't seem to appreciate that.
Yeah, I think I think Doug might have talked about it once on a podcast. The play where Russ spins like 3 times, like literally like 3 times, and throws him a ball and against the Cardinals.
Yep.
I think the Minnesota playoff game, I don't know if it was as much spinning around, but that's the one that's in my mind of him scrambling and hitting Doug in a game where the Seahawks had nothing going offensively, but still managed to win.
That was more the product of a bad snap, if I remember correctly.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Whereas the Arizona one, just like a simple play action shot play, and he just spins like 3 times, throws Doug a ball, catches it, goes for like 40 yards. But it was like if you ask a lot of guys, not to make this just about Doug, but they would rather prefer you just like, all right, if the play's dead, just throw it away, because it is just hard to plan for that stuff. And I think the other part of that is not just that it's hard to plan for that stuff, it's that the perception was, and this was a big part of the book, as you know, the perception was he's doing all that scrambling because his guys aren't open because they're not good enough. And that pissed the receiver room off. They're just like, what do you mean we're not good enough? We're open. Watch the tape. This guy just can't see, whether that was true or not. It's how they felt, and I think this was not totally Russ's fault, as I mentioned in the book, but they were fighting outside perception quite a bit. I think channeling some of that towards the quarterback as well. Envy, jealousy, resentment, whatever word fits. But like Kurt Warner calling them pedestrian or whatever, or Deion Sanders, whoever it was, like that hurt their feelings, and like it was hard for them to see Russ get all this credit. Like, oh, look, they signed Percy Harvin. Now Russ has someone to throw to. If you're Doug and Jermaine and Golden, you're like, what the hell? What? We've been getting open, So I think that was part of it too. Not just that like Russ didn't play on time. It was the perception was he's not playing on time because his line sucks and his guys aren't open. And all these guys who are in film are like, what are you guys watching? That is absurd, And they were saying it in real time too. It wasn't just in hindsight. Doug dedicated a lot of his press conference after one of those title games to be like, I was watching ESPN in the morning and these guys were just saying we weren't good enough. So now we're saying we're pedestrian. Now we're pedestrians. How we're gonna walk our ass to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think he said he saw like Chris Carter and another former player say that about them. That was in real time. So that hurt. That stuff hurt. And they've talked about it since then too. But I think that was, and not I think, I know that was part of the genesis of their feelings as well. It wasn't just that what Russ didn't do. It was like Russ's shortcomings weren't perceived as shortcomings of his own. They were perceived as shortcomings of his teammates. And they were like, what the hell? That sucks.
Obviously, we're cursed crew forever, but like anyone who thinks that Doug Baldwin wasn't able to get separation and get open, it's pretty preposterous. I got to say that. Last thing, on the book and on Russ specifically. I do think the one thing I really disagreed with in the book, which obviously is great, everyone who's a Seahawks fan should read it, because even as someone who has followed so closely over this entire era, there was tons of new stuff to me, tons of things I learned, and that's, I think, the biggest testament to what you did. Even though you were talking before we started recording about wanting to make sure there was appeal to non-Seahawks fans as well. But you said that like Russ is going to leave with a mixed legacy. And I do think ultimately when enough time passes, like the wounds are still relatively fresh from his demanding a trade and trying to get Pete Carroll and John Schneider fired. I do think eventually, like, he's the quarterback on the only Seahawks team that won a Super Bowl. Eventually he is going to have a legacy that is up there with anyone in Seahawks history.
I hope so. I think it'll help if he can get some of his teammates on board.
Yeah.
Too.
It's a little like Ray Allen with the Celtics right now.
Yeah. They got that. That's real beef over there too. Yeah. I think, it's just gonna help if you can get other people to come around. You know what's really gonna help is if they just kind of be honest with each other. Because right now I think they're all just kind of being phony about it. I think it was good that Russ showed up to Pete Carroll's like going away thing when he got fired. And he was able to like, oh, look, I'm hanging out with Doug. And, Marshawn has hung out with Doug, or excuse me, Marshawn and Russ have seen each other since then. I think they might have even taken some pictures together or something. But I think all those guys need to just sit down and just like no cameras and do the Hawaii thing the right way, and really, really spill that out because, he just left even on KJ's pod. He was with Golden, his interview with Golden Tate, and KJ just kind of left it out there. It's like, he owes a lot of guys an apology. He's got a lot of, relationships to repair. I think that was more so about the rumor about Golden and Russ's wife, but like that's part of it too, like those guys felt like he didn't have their back. He didn't have one of their brothers' backs about like a rumor about him sleeping with his wife. That goes beyond football. I don't know how you get over that. So I hope you're right, but I do think time's only going to heal us so much with some of those guys. It really will. And I think the other tricky part will be what happens with the rest of the franchise since then. Because right now, as we're sitting here, Russ is the only quarterback, the last quarterback to win a playoff game. Forget the Super Bowl. Now, if that stands for, we're here in 2035 and that's still the case, then I think the Russ appreciation will grow a little bit more to be like, damn, we didn't know how good we had it. Sam Darnold goes out here and win 12 games or something like that and gets him to the NFC Championship, or even Jalen Milroe or whoever, maybe it changes a little bit. But I do think eventually Russ is gonna have to have that, like, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus moment with some of his teammates. And I think that that's gonna. I would actually bet on that not happening. Because the thing about Russell, and I hope this came across in the book, because it's very hard to explain. And I think Jason Jenks, my colleague at The Athletic, did a good job of it one year. Russ doesn't think he's pretending. You know what I mean? Like his truth is that this is how I am. And I don't know how you undo that. Yeah, I just don't. Because I think he would need to really resonate with some of those guys in a way that would feel real. Because Russ's whole thing is like, there's a king in every crowd, like here's all these things my dad taught me about how to be a quarterback, how to interview. So to him, that's just being him. He doesn't think that like I'm turning a thing on when I wake up. So I don't really know how to fix that. Because I do think you have to fix that, particularly with Marshawn. I think the short version of what I'm saying is if he can get like Marshawn on board, I think his legacy will help. Because I think that the worst thing you could ever do is like not be tight with Marshawn. That's like the quickest way to get everyone to just not like you. He's the cool kid in class. And if he thinks you're lame, then you're just kind of a lame.
Yeah, to Tristan's point earlier. Yeah.
I mean, Marshawn is going to be, I think Sherm and Marshawn are going to stand the test of time as kind of like the dudes from the era that everybody likes the most.
Bobby.
Bobby's different though. Like people internally might, but to the public, like Bobby's probably not going to be on the sideline shooting photos at a preseason game. And the approval rating that Marshawn has is nationally, internationally, 100%. And Bobby Wagner is not a personality like that.
Bobby's probably going to like own a percentage of the team at some point. That's going to be his thing. He's going to be like a team owner.
Storm co-owner, Bobby Wagner.
Yeah. I was watching the game the other. I watched all the games. I was watching it the other day, sitting there courtside, and then the little, bottom third was like Storm owner. I was like, that's so freak. I couldn't take a picture fast enough. I was gonna send it to him. Like, dude, that's so cool. It's a Storm owner under your little, not Bobby Wagner, the football player. Didn't even say he played for the Commanders. I don't think. He just said Storm owner. That's really cool. But yeah, I think Marshawn all like really will stand out. But I do think you're right, Kevin. A test of time, Russ's public perception to get a little better. But I do think he's going to need a lot of those guys to start like advocating for him publicly. Because if you notice, they don't even do that outside of like Cliff. No one gets on these podcasts when they reminisce and talk about how much they love Russ. None of them do that at all. I just watched the interview with Marshawn and Sam Darnold and on the Get Got pod with Mike Robinson. They just Mike Rob just randomly threw shade at Russ in the part of the interview. It's like they're still doing that. As long as they're still doing that and no one's like gung ho for Russ, it's very tricky. I think it's really going to stand out when he tries to get in the Hall of Fame. That'd be interesting. Which teammates advocate and believe he's a Hall of Famer?
It's it's a fascinating question. I've said this to Kevin before, but it's like sports don't matter, right? Like none of this is like means anything ultimately, but the thing that matters is stories, right? And being able to tell these stories, which obviously is like an amazing thing that you've done in this book, and being able to tell the story of the Seahawks era more than just like these were great players, you know what I mean? But like digging deeper, telling the story of why this is happening, how everybody perceives them. That I think is the stuff that is going to last, because that's how like legacy is made, is basically through the stories more than numbers. The Super Bowl matters, and I think that is going to be helpful for Russell Wilson. But I think you're also right about how good the team is, because the Matt Hasselbeck era is not, it just doesn't matter as much because of how good they were almost immediately after. Like that
Yeah.
initial run. Walt Jones has been so present in Seattle that Walt has kind of like stood the test of time. But almost, I mean, I remember when Lofa Tatupu was like the most famous Seattle athlete, and Lofa over time is like, you never see a Lofa Tatupu jersey, somebody like that. But the stories are what matters, and Marshawn and Sherm have been so good at telling those stories about going out, and I think that's a thing that
And
Russ,
expanding those stories in their post-playing
Yeah.
careers.
yeah,
Yes.
continuing to do more. I will be very fascinated if Russ becomes a broadcaster and he's really good. Then Russell Wilson can't, like, the legacy of Russell Wilson all of a sudden looks better. Russell Wilson on the New York Giants is not helping his legacy at all, right? Which I don't think he gives a shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Russell Wilson thinks he is going to go to the playoffs with the Giants probably right now. He thinks he is a starting caliber NFL quarterback. He's not helping himself in Seattle. I don't think he gives a fuck about that right now in the moment. But if he has something that he's able to basically like expand on the story of Russell Wilson, then that'll be very helpful as sort of recontextualizing the Seahawks era. If he is a broadcaster and he's terrible, then it's going to look even worse. You know what I mean? If he's telling cliches, it'll be like everything that we felt about Russell Wilson was right in a way that like Akeem Talib or somebody, right? Like as a player, you're like, he's a good player. As a broadcaster, we fucking love him. I think it's made Romo seem like a better player over time because of how much people liked him in the booth. Greg Olson. So I think
Oh,
figuring out a
sorry to cut you off. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I just thought about the other part that'll matter. I think his Hall of Fame advocacy will be very important. If his teammates come out and support, that's going to be very huge. And the other part is, hopefully, I'm a part of whenever the documentary is made about this era, how that's framed as well. If it comes before Russ can do his own doc on his own playing career, athletes got their own production companies now. They can just do it. But so whichever one comes first, I think will be very interesting to shape his legacy as well. Because you look at this, Netflix is clearly pouring out the budget to get the people to sit down if they need them. They got everybody and their mama for the Jerry doc. So if they can do that as well for this Legion of Boom era thing, that I'm sure will have to happen at some point. Again, hopefully I'm involved. How that is framed will be very interesting too, because we're getting up there to the point where there are people old enough to vote who don't remember the Legion of Boom.
Yep.
Right? Like, if you're old enough to vote, you were born in what, '06 or something like that, so you were single digit age when they won the Super Bowl. So it's going to change a little bit. A doc on this would be kind of interesting as
But
well.
you're calling it the Legion of Boom era too, and I think that is informative also, because that is, it's like the name. We're not calling it the Russell Wilson era. Like ultimately when we talk about it, it's sort of like Pete Russ was the timeline.
I mean,
But like
in the book, it's sort of defined as the Pete Carroll era because the end frame is Carroll getting
Yeah.
fired, and then
but the
Just got to
Legion of
sell
Boom
some
is
books, though. You know.
the Legion of Boom is what stands though. Like that's when we
Yeah.
talk about this,
It
like
is-
when you
it's
talk
an
about
amazing nickname.
historical teams, you talk about them in terms of those nicknames, and that's who stands out. So I don't know. I had forever been on. I think Russ will be perceived very positively in Seattle long term, which it'll be positive. But almost having this conversation, I'm kind of like, I think Sherm and Mike-Shawn have been so good.
I think you're
at frame-
underselling Bobby Wagner's universal popularity.
Tell me
because
the
no one has a
story of
negative
what is
thing
the
to say about
story of
Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner. Not even negative things. People care about stories. What
I
is
think
That's
Bobby Wagner's like post-playing business career, I think, is going to be a story.
we'll see. Yes, I mean if he does that, then that could be. But right now, he's not on like the NFL Network stuff matters for sure. Like being on there with Ryan Fitzpatrick, that stuff matters.
It matters so much that you don't know what network it's on.
Yeah, he's on Amazon, but I do think
He started at NFL Network, didn't he? Or is he always
I
at
don't think so.
Amazon? Okay,
yeah, he's
well, whatever.
always at Amazon. But I do think with Bobby, to Tristan's point, Bobby was the last chapter I wrote because it was the arguably least compelling story of all the main characters. Um, it was a good story, but it was mostly a story of like consistency and sustained excellence, which is not nearly as good. There's no arc. His story really had no arc.
Yeah, you point out that there's not like a singular Bobby Wagner play in the same way that there is for a lot of these. I mean, there are amazing Bobby Wagner plays, but not as singular.
Yeah, maybe I'll go back and quote tweet it. But when I was writing the book, I tweeted out, "Hey, what's your favorite Bobby Wagner play?" Just because I couldn't think of one, so I wanted to see what the fans said, and they all gave me just like four that weren't even that good. Um, and it really sucks for Bobby because his interception of the Super Bowl that they lost is the play I believe where Cliff gets concussed on the run back. So like even then, like what could have been his greatest play, A, they lose the game, but B, it knocks out Cliff, which is contributes to them losing the game. Yeah, just a very unfortunate. I do think Bobby could have uh this a little hyperbole, but like a Magic Johnson-esque post playing career where you just like you look up and you're like, oh wow, Bobby owns part of the Seahawks. He owns part of I don't think maybe you can't own an NBA team too, but like maybe he owns part of the Storm and the Sonics. I said 10 years from now, he's like, oh, look at Seattle sports you associate with Bobby and not even just for the team he played on.
Yeah.
I think you could I could see Bobby with that, and then owning some other businesses here. He owns that Crumble, I think, in Renton. I think he could expand his legacy a little bit where he's just like associated with sports in Seattle, not even just the Seahawks. On the business side, again, very, very similar to Magic. And I would say that even if he wasn't literally learning from Magic now, playing for the team that Magic owns, which I think is going to influence that trajectory for him.
All right, one last thing on Russ's legacy. I do think it matters the fact that
we should let Mike-Shawn go. We should start talking.
No, it's cool. I told you the kids are asleep, so we're good, man. I drank my coffee. I'm good, man.
I do think it matters that he hasn't been good after Seattle, because if he had gone to Denver and been as good as he thought he was going to be, like there would be, as with Peyton Manning, sort of this bifurcated career. But Russell Wilson at this point is clearly not going to belong to any other team but the Seahawks. And I think that's going to frame how he approaches things is in his, second act after his playing career.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think there's going to be like, there's a world where just like probably just like two fan bases just hate him with Denver and Seattle. But probably just Denver, where they're just like, dude, you kicked our ass in the Super Bowl and then we pay you and then you're not that good here. It's just really, really unfortunate. But yeah, I think that will matter as well. He was never as good as he thought he was, which I think he needed. I'm glad he got that. Yeah, I think he and Pete needed to just part ways for that reason. I think they were both kind of like, my way is the way, and they both had a point, but they were both also wrong. I think they both needed to get away from each other and then win 0 playoff games without each other to realize, maybe I should have listened to that guy a little bit more. But I feel Pete, because from their view, it's like he tried to get me fired. So it's like, well, you can go, which I understand.
But I mean, Pete's ability to mend fences is second to none. But yes, we should pivot, as Tristan was saying. We also this week, having Mike-Shawn on, decided to use him as part of our search for Seattle's best cookie, which this week was the highly anticipated, the intensely debated Battle of the Breads, featuring Saint Bread near the University of Washington campus near Portage Bay, and Ben's Bread in is it Greenwood? I don't know, just west of Green Lake, up there east of Ballard and Fremont. So I was able to bring these to your book signing on Monday. You were mentioning, so there was two boxes. The white box was Saint Bread, and that's a chocolate chip cookie, and then the gochu doodle, which features gochujang and sesame seeds, a very unorthodox cookie. And then Ben's Bread, which has the caramel chocolate chip cookie, as well as a blue corn cookie that also a little bit unorthodox. So Mike-Shawn, as you're remembering these, what did you think?
I think it's so funny having somebody show up at your book reading with boxes of cookies and
It
being
was
like,
it was very unusual.
judge these.
It was better than the
Yeah.
time I brought Bill Simmons a copy of my book at his book signing, which is not how that generally is supposed to work.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of what was in the sesame seeds. That was a mystery. Oh boy. Uh,
But you were saying your
yeah,
wife had a different perspective on them.
yeah, it was interesting. So, you met my wife and she tried them at the book signing, and then we brought the cookies home, and I ate them, I think the next day, or maybe when I got home that night. And I was like, I remember she was like, because I didn't eat the whole cookie. I'm not really a huge cookie person. So she was about to toss them. And I was like, yeah, nah, man. I tried them. I was like, I don't know what was up with the white box. And she was like, what? That was the good box. I said, are you kidding me? And then she pulled out the rest of the sesame seed one. I said, oh man, do you like that? That I couldn't believe what I kind of ate them blind too. They were sitting on our counter and I'm walking downstairs. So I just kind of like tried all four in my walk from the kitchen to downstairs. And so I tried, I think in order, caramel chocolate chip, corn, whatever you said,
Blue corn,
regular chocolate chip, uh and the sesame seed in that order, I'm pretty sure. And I'm just like holding a piece of each one in my hand, eating them as I walk down the stairs. And I remember I got down the stairs and I tried the sesame seed last. I said, "Oh man." I said, "That was a cookie?" And that did not go well. So yeah, easily the brown box that had the caramel and the corn was okay, but that was it. I couldn't believe she said the white box was the good box. I just couldn't believe it. Like that was just unreal feedback to me.
Saint Bread, the Russell Wilson of cookies, according to this polarizing
Very,
results.
very polarizing. Yeah, she loved it. I said, I can't believe you love the sesame seed cookie.
Okay, I'm gonna go next because I similarly to you. I mean, I've had these before, but I got them in a bag and they were sort of melted and just kind of all together. And I was like, what the hell is this? I really didn't know what was what. The corn was easy to tell. The two chocolate chips were pretty hard to tell which was which. And then obviously the gochu doodle was like, it's a singular cookie. And I had it at first. And I remember having the corn before and being like, this is pretty good, but it's a little crunchy, right? It's probably the least soft of all of the cookies.
I mean,
that we
definitely Ben's Bread way crunchier than Saint Bread. Saint Bread, a very,
the
very
gochu doodle is almost like falls apart, right?
Yeah.
It barely has any consistency. And I remember liking the corn, and I think that the depth of the texture, this is how we talk about cookies on this podcast, Mike-Shawn. The depth of the texture of the corn cookie, where like the flavors come out as you're eating it, and you're like, oh wow, I can really tell there's more and more here. And I was like, I think this is gonna be it. And then the next day, because I was really like the two chocolate chip cookies to me were basically equal. I was kind of like, I can't really tell the difference between these two. I think they're both excellent. And I think both of the locations, Ben's Bread and Saint Bread, are both pretty phenomenal as far as cookies go. The next day, I had more of the gochujang cookie. And I was just like, the flavor in this cookie, it's a little spicy in both like tangy way, but then also it's such a unique flavor and it has actual spice to it as well. And I was like, corn cookie just cannot compete with this. The gochu doodle is by far, it pushed it over the edge for Saint Bread for me. So you're gonna have to be the tiebreaker, Kevin.
This is great. I love this. I mean, I had a similar experience with the gochu doodle where I had it the first day. I was like, ooh, this is not right. And then the second day I had it again, had some leftovers, and I was like, oh, you know what? I did the Russell Westbrook meme. Pretty interesting on it. But it was not enough to sway me. I gotta say,
Wow.
I think the blue corn was like maybe a touch too much sugar or too much salt on it for me.
Oh no, I could not have enough salt.
On a cookie?
Oh yeah, no, I love salted
Oh.
everything.
Oh,
Salted
boy.
caramel cookies.
But the caramel to me and the crisp and the different texture on there, as opposed to kind of the more one note texture of the Saint Bread chocolate chip cookie, pushed it ever so slightly over the edge. So we have a split decision, a
Wow.
2-1 vote this week for Ben's Bread, which has advanced to the semifinals.
Down goes
I-
Saint Bread.
I support that.
Saint Bread, New York Times acclaimed bakery. I mean, obviously, I still have been there 2 times and have never tried anything but their cookies, despite the fact that it's surely all amazing. And I waited entirely too long in line this time, but didn't have the time to grab anything else. So I look forward to going back, but it will not be in the semifinals of our search for Seattle's best cookie as Ben's Bread
Wow.
is moving on. So, Mike-Shawn, thanks so much for helping us decide this search, this round of the search, and we always love having you on. Hopefully, it's a little more optimistic the next time we're talking than litigating what went wrong for
No,
the
this
Legion
was
of Boom
this
Era.
was awesome. I am so excited to read the book after this conversation, and I hope that everybody out there. I feel like a lot of people have already bought it, but everybody who hasn't, sounds like it's pretty essential reading for a
Without
Seahawks
question.
fan.
Yeah.
I hope so, man. That was the whole point, man. I just really wanted to do something that people could like feel like they needed to tell somebody else about. Like, man, did you see this thing in this book? Like,
We
if
didn't even talk about you casually mentioning that Marshawn Lynch drank on game days.
oh yeah, that's out there. That's
Okay,
on
I
like
didn't know
podcast
that one.
interviews. You know what I thought was you guys will
That's
appreciate
one of the
this.
things about it is like there's a lot of Seahawks podcasts out there. So, I'm glad that you were there, like getting all of them, compiling it together with your original reporting because I don't have the time.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to get to. I think Marshawn, I think the first time I might have heard that is when he did like a thing with Peyton Manning. I think he like drinks Hennessy with Peyton Manning.
Oh my god!
Uh, yeah, I think forget what
Oh, on the
Peyton
Manning
Manning's.
cast?
It wasn't on the Manning cast. I'm not really sure you could drink on there, but it was they were like shooting a commercial or something maybe, and Marshawn was like, "Yeah, I used to have a shot of Henny before every game or something, just some random admission." And I just remember thinking, "That's nuts." Um, but yeah, like it was just kind of known. Um, but I was originally discouraged at first from like, man, look at all this stuff that's just already out there on all these pods. And then I started to research and I'm like, oh, there's just no way everyone's watching all of these pods, you know? Because there was the point there where I wasn't even like in my newspaper.com's archive or just like my deep in Google image archives and reading old transcripts and stuff. It was more so like, oh, let me watch this 25-minute Luke Wilson Barstool interview. It was just so many of those that I sat through. After a while, because at first I was like, oh, I wanted all original interviews and all this exclusive stuff. And then, like you just said, no one's watching all of these. And even if you do, it's like you just piece it all together and it can feel new and in a more complete story. Because the worst thing I think that's happening with player-driven podcasts, players interviewing players, is the players are bad interviewers and don't do follow-ups and they don't consider the follow-ups when there's other people involved in the story being told.
Yeah.
So like you tell a story about Russ and they're just letting it fly because you want to make your guests feel comfortable. But it's like, no, you got to check some of this stuff or like, understand there's another perspective there. I think we're in a dangerous space right now with that. So like someone may say, this is how this went. For instance, I just watched the interview of Golden Tate describing being punched by Percy. You watch Percy describe that. It's two different fights, completely two different fights. Their interviews are very far apart, and that was Golden has seen the Percy interview and still described a different fight. So he brings it up. I think it was on like Bussin' with the Boys or something. So it just kind of I went in very discouraged, thinking, "Damn, I'm not gonna get all these guys." And on top of that, there's all of this publicly available information about what I'm about to write and ask people to buy. And then by the end, I was like, "Oh, there's no way everyone's tracking all of these podcasts." Because some of the good shit, like Doug did an interview with I think the comedian Adam Ray, I want to say. Probably like a 90-minute interview or something. And the good stuff about the team, the stuff about Doug's background is all in the beginning of the pod, but the stuff about the team starts about maybe like 50 minutes in. So how many people are watching that and all the other pod interviews Doug's done and the interviews Pete's done and all the Sherm podcast interviews and all the KJ Wright podcast? There's too much. Like I had time to do all that, but I had to really remember the casual, even the diehardest of the diehard is not watching all of this. So even Shannon Sharp's interview with Mike-Shawn, which was like 3 hours, I think. Like how many people have seen it all the way? I remember all this stuff. So the oversaturation of the podcast market, what I thought was going to like work against me, and I actually think that really helped out because the only benefit I think to player driven podcasts, and yes, I'm hating, um, is is that the players do feel safe in a way that they will let something slip that they would not have. Like it would have been nice to interview Marshawn. There's no way he'd have told me all the stuff he told Shannon.
Yeah.
So there's the benefit of him talking to Shannon. It would have been nice for me to talk to him as well because Shannon didn't ask some very necessary follow-ups, I think, particularly about the Russell, his relationships with Russell and Pete. Very incomplete interview by Shannon. Yeah, that would have been great. But the fact that he got those parts for me to then go investigate the other parts he didn't ask about was like half the research right there. It's like, hey, Marshawn said this somewhere. Now let me go talk to the other people involved. I needed him to say it somewhere else first. So that helped. I can't express enough. I was like really pissed about that for like 3 months. Like fuck, man, because I was writing this as they were celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Super Bowl team. Remember they put out a doc that year, and KJ was doing all these interviews, and Sherm was doing all these interviews. They both interviewed Pete at the time. I'm like, they're taking all my stuff. But then I was like, oh, nobody's watching all this shit, so I'll just use it. That was cool. So I think that really enhanced it as well. You get guys saying stuff to Pete, and the players knew what to ask sometimes in ways that I wouldn't have, because they were there. So that was kind of cool as well. Particularly Sherm, his interview with Pete was really good. So
what we really need is you on a player's podcast as the co-host. That's what you're telling me here.
Yeah, it's so weird. They don't even get like journalist co-hosts for some of these. They just get like a random person too to be like the
who would put a random person on a podcast like that?
It really frustrates me quite a bit actually. But yeah, if I would love to be able just in real time when I'm like, I wouldn't even need to be the co-host, but just have me just sit there and watch and then be able to just jump in and be like, hey, stop. Sure. Ask him why.
I want to do this all the time on podcasts.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he just mentioned this, KJ. Pause. Stop. Ask him about that. Forget your, because I understand. You can tell when you're young in journalism. I used to do this a lot. I used to go to the interview with my questions written down on the notepad, and I would not deviate from that, right? You do that when you're college journalists or whatever. Then you get to where I'm at. I haven't written down my questions in probably a decade, right? So I'm just so used to being a listener first and just remember my questions. So, but you can tell these guys are not, whether it's the Bussin' with the Boys or Pat McAfee or whoever, they're just not used to that. They're vibing. Those are vibe interviews. Well, that's cool until you're like really deep diving on a serious topic or something like that, or telling a story that involves other people. Sometimes you got to stop and say, hey, wait, you said that mattered to you. Why? Or that hurt you. Why? I just wish I could jump into the screen sometimes and be like, hey, clarify that. And they just don't. It's just like, all right, now let's talk about this. It's like, wait, no. Stop the Prize Picks ad real quick and let's ask about this thing instead. It's so infuriating, particularly with this. It was so many stuff. Everyone who talks to Marshawn just does not follow up, and it's just really annoying. Because he says a lot of stuff that requires follow-ups. Him in particular, he stands out probably the most. Him and Russ, and Russ doesn't do any of these pod interviews, and when he does do an interview, it sucks. So yeah, I can't wait till there's a doc on this, so I hopefully get to interview Russ. That would be great. I guarantee I do the best Russ interview, having done all this research now. That would be great.
We're putting that out there in the universe.
Hope so, man. I hope so. I need it. He declined to talk for the book. So yeah, of course he did. That's no surprise to anyone. But yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been nice. I think it would have helped his perception for sure. If he'd have talked to me.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Mike-Shawn, for talking to us, and we always love it.
Appreciate you guys.
Don't burn yourself. We got Mariners hot takes coming at you.
So I wanted to give an update on my classic American summer as an act of defiance, or how I learned to go out and do stuff so as to not doom scroll on my phone all day, every day. And As you know, in this classic American summer, I've been to the Holiday Inn on the River by IHG in Portland, been to the hydroplane, Seahawks practice, done a spontaneous Mariners game, swam in the Cedar River among hundreds of our closest Renton friends, been to Wild Waves and Enchanted Village multiple times, have hit at numerous Little League fields across the state, played catch with those Velcro pad things in the tennis ball, spent a week in Kennewick with a pool, have been to every BMX track across Washington State, West Seattle Summerfest, and Ballard Seafood Fest. Tried to watch the Perseid meteor shower, but smoke had a different perspective.
You went to West Seattle Summerfest and didn't tell me?
I mean, this was like a month and a half ago.
I was in Vegas, I think, at that point.
It's a public event. It's not a private event. You were invited.
I'm aware, but anytime you go to West Seattle, you should inform me.
Well, I was there this weekend, and I did not inform you.
Did you inform any better?
The people of West Seattle tried to keep me out. Tried to watch the Perseid meteor shower, but smoke had a different perspective. This past weekend, Diamond Club, an outdoor movie for the first time ever, Wicked. Visited a bonsai tree motherfucking food truck. Got a $1.50 hot dog and soda. Backyard parties, talk shit about the storm. Got CDs at Easy Street and dug for clams at Alki. More cookies than I should eat. Tickets to the Husky football game you're too scared to attend this weekend. And probably more. But I can't believe you would choose to go to a sorry team like the Seattle Storm instead of seeing the greatest quarterback to ever walk the face of the earth. That's your call. But as we head toward the fall, and as we all know, fall begins at Labor Day, autumnal equinox be damned, I've made a claim that this is going to be a classic American fall. And the only way for that to happen isn't within my control. I could go to every pumpkin patch and apple pressing get together on earth. But Seattle has only experienced 5 true falls ever. And I didn't even argue that the dome ones don't count, despite my love for domes. Playoff baseball, outdoors, is it. The October cold in the air of a night game, the tension around each inning, each run, every bullpen decision. No sport in the world can compare to a tight, crisp, in the air under the lights baseball series. And that is why the Seattle Mariners are not just competing for a playoff spot right now. Every game, every tick of the playoff odds that they have as we get closer to it is for the city of Seattle and our classic American fall that we deserve, we have worked for.
Nothing says fall quite like the Mariners 18-inning game against the Astros that was played in like 90-degree heat.
That is what I'm saying.
Smoke.
That is what I'm saying. It's part of the reason we need to win the division. Win the division and get a bye because they have to guarantee some games in Seattle. That one game was not enough. I don't think we've experienced a classic American fall since 2001.
So you're not counting 2022 as a classic American fall?
No, I'll count that.
Okay.
But I believe it ended at nighttime.
It definitely did end at nighttime. Another thing,
But
Zach and I,
close.
we had a wide encompassing conversation on Monday. We managed to start our day watching the Mariners Astros game at Rachel's Ginger Beer at U Village, attend an entire college football game against
Cal.
Nope.
Stanford? One of those two.
Jed Fish.
Stanford. No, that's wrong.
It's not wrong.
Yeah, it is.
Tato, no, it's not. It is factually not wrong. It was against Arizona. Tataroa McMillian had your guy who you're upset you didn't get in your fantasy draft earlier had a monster game, a coming out party perhaps. Attended that entire college football game, and then went back to the Rachel's Ginger Beer and still had time to see the end of that game. So it was quite a marathon. So it started in the throes of day, but did end in the darkness, as we saw the darkness about the Mariners. Are you looking this up and not being able to find which game it was? It's readily available information. Jaden DeLora had a monster game. Here, this was pre Noah Fafita. Do you acknowledge this now?
I do, but I don't.
I mean, you weren't out there for very much of the game.
I really don't remember that being it, but
you and Luca were inside for a lot of it, but I was there. I was there until I joined you on the concourse to watch extra innings. A 46-yard touchdown, back-to-back McMillan touchdowns. Jalen McMillan and Tataroa McMillan. What a day. What a time to be alive. All right, should we talk about the Mariners a little bit, I suppose?
Absolutely, we should.
Victor Robles is back, still appealing his suspension. Got activated from the injured list on Saturday as part of this appeal before the Mariners go through the stretch where they faced a bunch of left-handed starters. So he's been starting in right field as part of the right-hand part of that platoon with Dom Canzone.
Canzone was also hurt for a chunk of that. I was consternated for a second where I was like, we are not giving this job to Robles right away.
No. I mean, and then Luke Raley got the start today on Tuesday, or on Wednesday, I should say, because of that same Canzone issue. The Mariners to create a spot on the roster, as we expected, pour one out, designated for assignment, Dylan Moore, and subsequently placed him on unconditional release waivers. It's been reported he plans to sign with the Texas Rangers, although I don't know if that's yet official. So Dylan Moore, Sam Haggerty, after all this time, like he finally got away from Dylan Moore. And suddenly, Dylan Moore and Sam Haggerty are reunited again, although Haggerty hopefully ahead of him on the depth chart by this point. So, and
Comfortably.
a terrific homestand for the Mariners. We mentioned them winning the Vetter Cup. That only took winning the opener because they had swept the Padres previously, but took 2 out of 3 against a terrific San Diego team here. Took 2 out of 3 against the Athletics. Back on track, I would say, after that struggle of a road trip.
I guess terrific. I don't know if I can quite get there on a terrific homestand. So 2 out of 3 against the Padres. I think people were underrating just how good the Padres are when there was a little bit of consternation about not winning. Like how difficult it was to win all these games, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah.
And the Padres are a better team than the Mariners are.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, like the Padres are a better team. They also have, when their bullpen came in and shut down the Mariners in game 2 of the series, it was like, yeah, they paid for this. You know what I mean?
Did.
Like they paid to be in this position to do that. But I think the one thing that I wanted to highlight was I think, and maybe people are still pointing this out, are catching on to this. There's been a little bit of consternation about Eugenio Suarez for a second. And I wanted to know,
in your mind, there's a lot of consternation going on.
Just how on track Eugenio Suarez is. So in the last 2 weeks, it takes a second to adjust. Like the Robles start has gone about as I expected it to go. And I mentioned that to you, like he needed time to get back. It's probably better that it's happening before he's serving the suspension. But if you look at the last 2 weeks, Eugenio Suarez by WRC plus 159, an OPS of 924. So he's basically spent 4 weeks in Seattle. The first 2 was very slower than we wanted it to be. Since then, he's been even better than he was with Arizona. And the Geno series that he had and the homestand that he had, obviously massive. And that is what is going to be the difference. That's how they're going to win series against teams like the Padres.
Okay.
So I'm still feeling good. Obviously, we have to wait a second longer for the Astros to play a bad team. But the series next week, which is Yankees Astros, I think is going to be a pretty fruitful one for the Mariners.
Something good is going to happen for the Mariners. So one more note on the Mariners. They moved Emerson Hancock to the bullpen after demoting him to Tacoma and now have recalled him as a reliever. Did not see him make his relief debut for the Mariners on Wednesday after he was called up against the Padres. But surely we will see that coming up on the road trip. Very interesting. He's been throwing harder in a relief role at Tacoma, touching 99 miles an hour at times. So we'll see what that means for his performance.
I'm fascinated by this. I mean, Brash was a starter not that long ago also, right? And Brash is now a pretty dominating reliever. I don't, obviously you'd rather develop somebody as a starter, and it's not saying that this is the end of his career as a starter, but like for the Mariners this season, he could be helpful as a reliever, and then there's an offseason to figure everything else out. But it's an interesting inflection point in Emerson Hancock's career and for the Mariners as they head toward the playoffs.
Well, as we get into the roundup, was an interesting inflection point for Seattle Sounders, who on Wednesday in the League's Cup semifinals beat the LA Galaxy 2-0 to advance to the finals. We toasted this because it was going on as we started recording tonight, and take on Inter Miami and Leo Messi in the final.
Where is this happening?
Cup. This is in Seattle.
This is going to be the biggest soccer game in Seattle history. Not actually Seattle history. This is going to be I think this might be the biggest Sounders game ever.
Yeah, I mean the 2019 MLS Cup championship
It's
was
just it is
number one
it is
previously,
not the same.
but certainly resale market because Messi hasn't played in
Oh,
Seattle
I
since
was
he's
like,
been in MLS.
I went to the game last week. It's like it's fun to go to a Sounders game. I'm like, people are sitting like I don't think you realize just how uninterested the crowd is for these Leagues Cup matches. It is unlike any other Sounders match I've ever been to.
Interesting. So yeah, so
Every other Sounders regular season match I've been to, people are standing the entire time.
I mean, you also haven't been to. Have you been to any this season?
Sounders matches, I don't remember, but I went last year and it was the same. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I have this year. It's not that different. But Leagues Cup in particular, because I think a lot of people just didn't add it to their ticket packages.
Right.
It's a little bit like, the like supporters group is loud. That's still the same, but the rest of the stadium is radically different. Leo Messi coming to town. All of a sudden, if the MLS wanted Leagues Cup to matter, put Leo Messi in the championship. It matters.
Going by the Discord, resale tickets over 300 is a get-in price right now.
Yeah.
So this will be Sunday at 5 p.m. against Leo Messi and Inter Miami.
Sunday,
Sounders,
what?
This Sunday.
Wow. And it's coming up soon.
Yes. Similar to MLS Cup 2019. I forget what day it was the Sounders played LA Galaxy, but not long after that they or LAFC at that point, I should say.
Is this shit on the Apple TV? That's not on any like terrestrial TV at all?
It does not appear that it is on terrestrial TV.
Tell me how it goes.
I tuned into a little of this one, although I tuned in right in between the Sounders scoring in the 7th minute on a Pedro de la Vega putback. Nice play by Paul Rothrock to help create some chaos in the box, basically, and set this one up to give the Sounders the lead. Osaze de Rosario starting again at striker with Danny Musovski of the aforementioned hat trick at the weekend, suspended for the remainder of Leagues Cup play, scored in the 57th minute to basically kill it off. Then the only notable moment after that, as we were recording, Nuhu sent off yet another Sounders red card in the 83rd minute, which means he will miss the final. And Sounders will have to try to defend Inter Miami without them.
There's so many watching Nuhu last week where I'm just like, why are you doing the thing that you're doing?
I mean, that's what makes...
Here's what I will say about the Sounders is I don't think they're idiots. We'll see how many tickets remain, but in the next couple of days, how quickly these tickets sell out. There's a lot of stadium they can open up.
They're going to open up the whole stadium. I'm very confident of that.
Right now, it's not open.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Well,
unless they're right now, it's just what they would have had open otherwise, and it's not sold out. It's expensive, but it's not sold out.
But that's got to be resale stuff, right?
No,
it's not face value 330, is it?
I mean, you could buy a ticket 229 row W for 196.
Okay. That still sounds like a resale price to me, but perhaps they just dramatically raised it specifically for the final. Yeah. We'll see how that evolves.
They're not resale tickets. It's face value tickets. They just raised it. The resale tickets are pink on Ticketmaster. Sounders
with this one did qualify for CONCACAF Champions Cup next year as the top 3 teams in this competition advance. At the weekend, another impressive performance for the Sounders is they beat, I guess, we have not talked about the Leagues Cup quarterfinal where they beat Puebla last week. A 0-0 draw that they won 4-3 on penalties, where Musovski got sent off with his second yellow in the 76th minute. Sounders still were kind of dominant with 10 men, but could not score. And then both teams missed their opening penalty. Andrew Thomas saved it for the Sounders after Christian Roldan went off the post and out. And then after 3 consecutive makes for each side, Obed Vargas gave the Sounders the 4-3 lead, and Andrew Thomas made it stand up as a winner with his second save of the shootout. On Sunday, they rotated the lineup heavily against Sporting Kansas City in an MLS game, but still tied their highest scoring outing this year behind Musovski's hat trick. Also got goals from Kalani Kosarienzi and Snyder Brunel, each their second career MLS goal. Sounders had 76% possession in a 5-2 win, one of their most impressive performances this season. So all very good stuff for the Sounders as they head up into this final against Leo Messi and Inter Miami, who beat Orlando City 3-1 in an all Miami matchup to get here. They did beat a Mexican side, obviously, in their first quarterfinal matchup, beating Tigres 2-1 at home. So it'll be very interesting to see. but not for you. You will just find out about it. Seattle Reign FC drew Houston 1-1 on Sunday. Jordan Heidema had the equalizer in the 65th minute as they earned a point. Were outshot 14-5 by the Dash, with just 2 of those 14 shots on goal. They're back home Friday to take on the hated rival San Diego Wave, who are third in the NWSL standings, but just 3 points ahead of the Reign, who are tied for fifth, which means they could pull even with full points. All right, Seattle Storm. There were some good moments on this road trip as they comfortably beat the Chicago Sky last Tuesday, then blew out the Dallas Wings on Friday, their most dominant performance in an extended period of time here. Their third 30-point win of the season, which is tied for the most in the WNBA. Sunday, got a thrilling Nneka Ogwumike game winner at the buzzer that bounced in to beat the Washington Mystics, but then a really disheartening performance Tuesday, taking on an Indiana Fever team that was without Caitlin Clark, who's been out an extended period of time, but also both Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson, their other 2-point guards on the roster, who had been part of the game where they won in Seattle earlier this month. Without them, the Fever starting Odyssey Sims on a hardship at point guard. She was one of 3 Indiana players, along with their all-stars Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, who had 20-plus points in this one. Storm never really competitive in a game that allowed Indiana to go from a half game back in the standings to a half game up in the race for 6th. And this was the moment where they lost me, is like, what can they do this season? I no longer think it's realistic for the Storm to win a playoff series. You're like, why did this take you so long?
I mean, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
First off, you should have not have thought that they were going to win a playoff series before.
I mean, I didn't think they were going to win a playoff series. I thought they could win a playoff series.
The incredible moment is the Storm. I don't know whether they chose to trade their pick vis-a-vis the Aces pick.
Yeah, we don't know whether they were given that
or
option.
whether that was a demand. But the Aces going on such an incredible run the second that the Storm didn't trade their pick.
A 12-game winning streak, tying the longest in franchise history. The Storm still have a better point differential than the Aces.
I'd cling to that if you'd like.
It's just truly
hang on to that if you want to hang on to that. The Aces are a better team, and you know they're a better team, irrelevant of the point differential.
I'm including the Aces among the teams. That's a very plausible first-round matchup. I'm including, especially after the Aces won today against Atlanta, to go 2 games ahead in the win column. So that could be a 2-7 rematch of last year's first-round series, Jewel Lloyd against the Storm. And yes, obviously I would favor the Aces in that matchup. It's just bonkers that they're so far ahead of the Storm, given where they were 3 weeks ago and where their point differentials are.
5?
3-game.
Okay. I mean, I guess what I will say is, in a 3-game series, anything can happen. So getting in is nice. They're not going to win a championship. It's out of the question. But
that's been off the table for a while. I mean, the other good development that's happened, that did happen on Tuesday, the LA Sparks lost, and they are still a game and a half back of the Storm. They're even in the loss column, but they have 3 fewer wins. And particularly if the Storm can win next Monday at home at Climate Pledge Arena against LA, it would be very difficult given the Sparks' remaining schedule for them to make the playoffs. So the worst case scenario obviously here is you trade your own pick for Brittany Sykes, and it ends up being the best of the 3 picks you were going to have next year. At least if the Sparks are in the lottery, that's something to build around Dominique Malunga. Because Malunga is still, she had a poor game against Indiana. Pretty much everyone other than maybe Nneka Ogwumike, had a poor game against Indiana, but against Washington had another terrific performance, and did it playing crunch time in a game where, the Storm desperately needed that win, and she stepped up and was a big factor down the stretch as they held off Washington, had 17 points, 10 boards off the bench in that one.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does the Storm have more talent than the Golden State Valkyries?
Yes.
Does the Storm have more talent than the Indiana Fever without all of their guards?
Probably. Yeah.
The Liberties, probably not.
I mean, the Fever still maybe have they definitely have 2 of the 3 best players in that game. I mean, the Liberty, no, they do not have more talent than the Liberty.
Do they have more talent than Phoenix, or is it?
I don't think so, because Elizabeth Thomas is really awesome.
Preseason, where would you have ranked the Storm talent-wise across the WNBA?
Probably fifth or sixth.
So they're not massively underperforming, but
I
they
mean,
are
the big thing is
underperforming.
it's tough to say injuries because on the one hand,
They haven't had almost any injuries.
but they have. It's just that Jordan Horston got injured in the offseason and Katie Lou Samuelson got injured in training camp. So the group that they started the regular season with
They're
has
not
been
missing
almost
Caitlin
entirely
Clark
without question, it's not the injuries that Indiana has had.
or even some of the other contenders.
I mean, yes, New York, Minnesota, Atlanta have all missed all-stars, MVP candidates in New York and Minnesota's case. Vegas hasn't really had that severe injuries.
I'm just reading the writing on the wall. When you have a situation like that, if your team is underperforming talent-wise, there has to be a problem, basically. It could be randomness, it could be all luck. But if I'm looking around,
some of it is randomness, but I do think that again, the Washington performance was not good. The Dallas and Chicago and Dallas like feeling pretty good about okay, the Storm have
they're
gotten
beating
over the hump of
the
these losing.
worst teams in the league.
But
Like
they're beating Dallas by 30. Like they did what they should do in that one. A good team should do in that one. And Washington was not an impressive performance, and Indiana was one of their worst performances this season.
So I'm just saying, I think a shakeup is needed, whether it's a shakeup of the roster or elsewhere. That is
again, a shakeup of the coaching staff is a shakeup of the roster. That's how you have to think of it.
That
There's only one version of a shakeup.
I mean, I think that's what this team needs then. Basically, like as we'll have the conversation as we head toward the offseason. It's not going to be that long before we're heading toward the offseason. But you think that with a new coaching staff, NECA is not coming back. Skylar's not coming back.
I think that they have made it very clear that a key part of the reason that they came to Seattle was and re-signed in NECA's case last offseason was Noel Quinn and the coaching staff.
Okay, a follow-up question. Is a team that is a game above 500 that important to keep together?
I think that's the question the Storm. That's the question the Storm are going to have to
Are
answer.
they capable of asking? I mean, honestly, we could talk about the Seahawks later, but like, is that a question that they are willing to ask themselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what the answer is going to be.
No, I'm not saying you do, but you do think that it is something that they are willing to have the conversation about, which is
no longer,
who are we? What are we doing?
I mean, like, again, my point has been, like, they don't necessarily feel like they need to have a really serious chance of winning the championship right now, because I do think financially just being a good competitive team is enough. But they are not right now a good competitive team. So that's why the question is legitimate.
I mean, I don't know how the ticket sales are looking, but like, I don't think that this record is like blowing them out.
I think they're doing fine, but they could be better.
It feels like a failed season to me to be in this place. And again, it's not because they've developed Malunga and that's
Exactly.
it. That's all that matters. But like, that was going to happen either way. The second that they drafted Dominique Malunga, that was going to happen. I mean, you could maybe give credit across the board. Like, I guess we're not running 1,000 simulations with 1,000 different coaches or whatever for Malunga's career, but it does feel like something. I think Malunga was inevitable.
Inevitable is nothing is inevitable.
So it just seeing that loss against Indiana was like, what are we doing here at this point?
So the Storm are back home for the after they play Minnesota on Thursday. They are back home for the duration. Get Chicago on Saturday, should be a very winnable game again. LA in that crucial matchup on Monday, and those two will determine a lot about A, number one, if they're going to have to sweat out the playoffs, and B, whether they have a chance to like legitimately move up in the standings. Whether it's better to be 7th or 6th is unclear. You definitely don't want to be 8th and play Minnesota in the first round. Our UW football, it's getting ready to kick off the season Saturday against Colorado State. 8 p.m. kickoff at Husky Stadium. Former Nevada coach Jay Norvell entering his 4th year in Fort Collins. He started 3-9 and 5-7 before winning 8 games last season, the most for the Rams since GM McElwain's departure in 2014. Colorado State went 6-1 in Mountain West play and missed out on the conference championship via tiebreaker, but pretty major offseason turnover, including losing the top 8 tacklers to either graduation and transfer, highlighted by Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year Mohamed Kamara. They also lost some guy named Torrey Horton to the Seahawks.
Hello.
I don't know. Have we heard about him, what he's up to? And their leading receiver, Caleb Goody, transferred to Cincinnati. They don't return any receiver with more than 350 receiving yards last season. They do bring back 2-year starting quarterback Braden Fowler Nicolosi, who finished 7th among qualifying Mountain West QBs and QBR. Averaged 29 pass attempts per game, down from 39 as a redshirt freshman in 2023. Is despite running an air raid with pass game coordinator Matt Mummy, the son of Hal, they averaged 35 rush attempts per game. Really, were pounding the rock. Avery Morrow topped 1,000 yards. Justin Marshall had 746, and Marshall takes over as the primary starter with Morrow's graduation. Colorado State changed defensive coordinators despite ranking better in the FPI efficiency on that end at 76 as compared to 109th on offense. They fired Freddie Banks after 3 seasons and hired Tyson Summers, who spent 2015 in that same role at Colorado State before becoming the head coach of Georgia Southern. Was also the defensive coordinator at Colorado in 2019 and 2020, notably beating the Huskies in Boulder in 2019, a game that still annoys me to this day.
Was that the one you were at, or we listened to on the radio?
It was one that I was at. Yes, I went to 2 games at Colorado, but that was the Jacob Eason game there.
Keep that anger with you.
Is that like I need a chip on my shoulder for fandom or something? I was there.
It's important to keep hanging on to your minor grudges from like 6 years ago. It's the only way to live. I mean, I guess it's so hard to even have this conversation in a lot of these weeks. It's funny. I feel like it's just rinse repeat in these preseason games. And a year from now, unless the Huskies lose, I will have no recollection of this game. Luca will be like, remember the Colorado State game from last year? And I'll be like, nope, not really. And that Huskies is the best case scenario.
Huskies are 21.5-point favorites here.
That is the best case scenario, is that I do not recall this game. I think the things to pay attention to are basically not will Damon Williams be dominant, because that's a foregone conclusion. Is how dominant is Damon Williams?
Nothing is inevitable.
Just how good the offense looks. It really is it. Like this offense can vary from, I think, good to excellent, and having a great performance against a team like Colorado State is going to be important. I guess is what I'll say. We kind of have a pretty good sense of what the roster is. They're going to mix it up. They're going to bring in other players. I don't know how much playing a game at home against Colorado State is going to help them prepare to go play a Big Ten road game as far as the offensive line goes. But like, if Damon has time, we have not seen a Damon Williams with any time in the pocket.
That's correct. Also funny in the context of the Russell Wilson conversation earlier, but he was legitimately running around out of necessity against Oregon, certainly, and maybe to a slightly lesser degree.
Hey, Denzel Boston gets open.
Yeah, no one is questioning Denzel Boston's ability. That is for sure.
I know that I said this with Mike-Shawn, but just to put a bow on it, I think people just don't fucking like Russell Wilson. And I think that we have spent a decade to just be like, they just don't like him. They don't like his personality. They don't like him. That's it.
I do think there's some greater complexity to be unpacked there, but that's for a different podcast for a different day. And the thing that I'm really curious to see, true freshman Raiden Vinesbright getting the start at slot here. He's listed as an either or on the depth chart with the Penn State transfer Omari Evans in the slot. So I'm excited to see that.
Oh, I think RVB I think it was at the spring game, ended up playing pretty excellent. And it was like,
yes.
He's going to be good. So I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, I guess my hope was that Omari Evans was way better, but like to have a freshman who's standing out in that way, he wasn't a massive recruit either. It's one of those things, but like Jed's been able to find some diamonds in the rough here.
We know it. And it sounds like true freshman John Mills will also probably get the start. He's listed as an or at left guard with Paki Finau.
He's listed as looking like an offensive lineman.
I don't see that designation on the depth chart specifically.
You see him and you're like, yeah, that's the starting left guard. Like that man is an offensive lineman through and through. He's got his mullet. Like, come on.
I'm excited to see Zach Durfee healthy and out there at the edge.
I know that he needs to play, but I'm like, just put the Durf God in a box right now. Save him.
Limited. Put him on a pitch count. We don't need to see a lot of him. I'm curious to see the new look secondary with Cario Davis out there opposite Ephesians Prysock, Alex McLaughlin in the mix. I'm excited to see that.
And Buddha, like
Devin Bryant. Comfortably winning a starting job at middle linebacker. Jacob Manu is still not cleared, certainly. very
Yeah, when is
plausible.
Jacob Manu back?
Very plausible that he will elect to redshirt and only play in 4 games during the regular season, so that
Okay.
he would have a full 5th year available to him.
Uh,
And to your point, I'm just excited to see Damon Williams Jr. play football again. You know, one of the things, I mean, there's a million things we could have gotten into if we were doing an actual full Russell Wilson pod, but just like the way we felt after the 2012 season, when it was just counting the days until we could watch Russell Wilson play football again, that's where we're at with Damon Williams Jr. too. I mean, you don't want to put the same level of intense hype and expectation on him, but I'm just excited to watch him play football
don't
because
want
he's a
to?
fun
'Cause-
player. No, I don't. I don't think that's fair.
I mean, he's not. I don't think he's getting it, but people are talking about Damon Williams. Like, he's not unknown overall, and this is going to be
He's
the
still
season.
a very young quarterback.
I mean, it is a full league of a lot of young quarterbacks. I think maybe it was a byproduct of all the extra years that people had from COVID, but across the country, I've talked about this a lot. There are not a lot of teams. There are not a lot of good teams with experienced quarterbacks. So I think Damon has a chance to stand out.
All right, percentage chances of victory.
But it's, I mean, 95, 98.
FBI only has it at 88%, so I'm going to go
As a
with a 90.
21-point favorite.
I mean, it's not exactly the same model. I'm going to go 92 here.
There's an ESPN model for the Mariners that had them as like a 70-some% for the playoffs, and I was like, what?
Oh, we did not take a look at Fangraphs today, did we? Mariners.
Okay, they do have their
90...
playoff odds up to, or maybe it was a different one. Maybe it was Baseball Reference. I don't know. ESPN has it up to 90% now.
Yeah, Fangraphs is at 91, so that's basically the same.
There was one thing that I looked at where I was like, oh no, it's Baseball Reference, 2025 Mariners.
I don't think that's the most
to make the postseason, and I was like, where is this coming from, my guy?
I don't think that's the most advanced. I don't know if that one knows about the Geno Suarez edition.
I agree. I'm just like, how does Baseball Reference not have more? I looked at that and I had a jump scare for a second.
It's not what they're there for. Baseball Reference is an amazing resource, but maybe some other resources for projections. All right, let's wrap up by talking about the current Seahawks. We didn't have a chance to get to that with Mike-Shawn since there was so much to unpack from the book, but they played their final preseason game Saturday against the Packers, losing 20-7 with Jalen Milroe playing the entire game, where he went 13 of 24 for 148 yards, had a touchdown, but 3 fumbles, all of them lost. Didn't see the same consistent production out of the run game here. 61 of the 97 yards by running backs came on a long Jacardia Wright carry. Other 15 went for 36 yards total, but we didn't see Ken Walker III, Zach Charbonnet, or George Holani in this one. A pretty good indication that it came to pass. George Holani beat out Damian Martinez for a roster spot. Did see some good stuff from Cody White, who had 3 catches and 5 targets for 69 yards in the game's only TD. And another foreshadowing was the fact that Marquez Valdes-Scantling ended up playing in this one. He did not make the Seahawks 53-man roster, and now reportedly signing with the 49ers in the wake of Demarcus Robinson's suspension
we're
to
just
start the
swapping players.
So he'll be there week 1.
Have fun with Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Oh, and then an awesome shout out to Ty Okada for an athletic interception on the opening drive. He did make it.
There we go.
On the final roster.
We talked about this a little bit offline, but like the MVS signing was sort of emblematic to all of the problems that I've had with John Schneider. I think it was $3 million guaranteed.
Yeah, it was $1.5 million signing bonus, $1.5 million guaranteed salary there that will offset with the money that he makes with other teams.
Okay, fair enough. I guess that makes it a little bit better, but it was just a little bit of like, it's not a bad thing. If Torrey Horton beat Marquez Valdes-Scantling, that's great. That's a good problem to have. But just why? Like, what were they looking for in this signing? And John has a little bit of a just lighting money on fire problem. And that is where he really struggles, is finding value. And I think that has been the consistent issue that he's had over the last, 6 years, basically, is he's had a really hard time finding value. And there have been some good draft picks in there, but a move like this is just like, what was this for?
I mean, we've talked about it. They really philosophically believe in not having enormous holes going into the draft other than left guard this year. And, they want to have like a competent veteran. And to your point, if Torrey Horton goes out and beats Marquez Valdes-Scantling, great. But I do think there's an amount where like all these little cap hits end up adding up, and their whole thing is we can't have a huge mistake. We can't have a huge mistake. Although they did have taken massive cap hits for Jamal Adams, Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, and Geno
They've
Smith in
made
recent
some
years.
of the hugest mistakes of, aside from maybe Deshaun Watson, like some of the hugest mistakes of the last 10 years in trading 2 first-round picks for a safety. Like,
But no, they're willing to make huge mistakes in trades. They just don't want to make huge mistakes in contracts.
it's still just the value is what you have to find as a GM that has, I mean, you have to be a good evaluator because you get the value from the draft picks. And it seems like this is where like a little bit less criticism. People are giving grades to drafts of players that have not played a single game yet. So
Wow,
like
how dare they?
Gray Zabel, I mean, again, they do it right after the draft too. But like Gray Zabel hasn't played it.
Not just they, me.
Do I think that Gray Zabel will be a good player? Probably. Do I think that Torrey Horton will be a good player? Probably. Like the players from this draft, it seems like, and the fact that they're making the team, like I think they're all good signs. But it's a little bit of like just you have to find value that it has to be part of the equation, and he's done a terrible job since the era we're talking about with Mike-Shawn of finding that much value.
I mean, my criticism has been more about just like structuring contracts so that because of the fact that they're short term, they have no upside. Like Uchenna Nwosu was the contract to me because they great scouting. They found Uchenna Nwosu, but they signed him to a 2-year deal. So they immediately had to extend him. And that extension didn't turn out very well. So like they didn't benefit from their great scouting. Like MVS, that's going to be a risk. But the Seahawks are 4th overall in dead money on their books this year. Although I will say, number 3 is the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe this is a good strategy.
That's a great way to look at it.
Number 1 is also
they'll
the 49ers.
probably win the Super Bowl.
The 49ers, who are probably going to be good. They're probably better than them, but maybe not because of their dead money.
Avoid dead money like the plague, because dead money can be a sign that you just have good players on your team. But there's a difference between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers too. It is the amount of playoff appearances that those two teams have had in recent years and playoff runs.
I mean, that's playoff wins. Actually, the Seahawks have had as many playoff appearances the last 2 seasons as the San Francisco 49ers. I guess that was that 3 seasons ago that the Geno team made the playoffs?
Yeah, but the dead money was like the DK trade was a huge part of it. I mean, we've litigated Trey Jones forever, but like we know that one was bad, but it is a little bit of like the DK, sure, Trey Jones was terrible. Lockett, obviously great. Geno was going to happen. Noah Fant was kind of bad process. MVS, they just paid him to show up for a few months.
So sometimes you do have to do that. Seahawks claimed cornerback Darion Kendrick off waivers from the Rams, waived Shaquille Griffin to make room for him on the roster, but John Schneider did say that Shaquille
$1.7 million
guaranteed.
It's dead cap hit.
Oof. Shaq will be on the practice squad, will stick around, and then reportedly will sign former 49ers linebacker Chaz Surratt after keeping just 3 off-ball linebackers on their initial 53. That presumably will also be taken care of by that roster spot will come from the fact that currently they have both Robbie Oots and Walker Russell listed at fullback, plus 4 tight ends, including undrafted rookie Nick Callerup making the final 53, which is pretty wild.
Again, it's only 1%, but like a lot of the players that they're expecting to contribute to the team are making 1% of the cap.
Yeah.
So 1% in this scenario kind of matters. Like they're not, you have to have a lot of players that you're paying throughout the year. So
that's interesting. I was thinking of this as the Seahawks really going a lot within the division, claiming a Rams player and signing a 49ers player, but Surratt never actually played in the regular season for the Niners. He just followed Robert Saleh is back with the Niners, right?
Yes.
Followed him from the Jets, where he played the last 3 seasons after being a 3rd-round pick by the Vikings in 2021.
I'm here to tell you that the Eagles' dead cap money is not the same as the Seahawks. Like 6% of it is Jason Kelce.
I know that it's not the same.
Another 3.5% is Fletcher Cox. Like
I don't actually think it's the same.
It is very different dead cap money that the Eagles have than the Seahawks.
All right, well, there you go. Stay tuned. We will have next week for you our annual Seahawks NFL preview and then the regular pod We're getting into it. Football season is here. You're going to be a game on Saturday. We'll see whether I make it out at some point.
Yeah, you got to watch the Storm.
I mean,
Come on.
they do literally pay me to do this. You know,
They don't. You're not employed by the Storm.
ESPN does. Yes,
I guess do you feel like you're becoming more of a WNBA writer over time? Like,
I do think so.
I mean, that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah.
That's how circling back to like 3 hours ago. That's how you afford to live near Edved.
Yeah. There you go. If a 10-year Chicago Sky game is what it takes, then the Storm Sky game is what it takes.
He
And I'm
probably
happy to do
prefers
it.
the Sky to either. There's no team in San Diego
Wow.
to the
Wow.
Wave or the Storm.
Yeah,
but
maybe should I propose that we call this the Better Cup?
yeah, throw it out there.
On that note,
Thanks for listening.
more cups. Thanks.
Okay, you're gonna say that I can't do this because of time. We've got 5 minutes. I just want to run through. It's fun for the people who are part of the fantasy draft if they were part of it. But you also are you running this team?
No,
You're handing
I'm
this team off. You
already
just did
off the
draft for
team.
them.
yes,
You're already off the team.
it's just
so
a
you
logistical
did-
issue.
A drafting for somebody else.
According to ESPN, I did a drafting. Yes.
It is actually so funny because looking at that roster that you drafted shows how just radically different our perspectives about fantasy football are. And
Because I drafted Jerry Judy.
you're like my bench is like all speculative, not all speculative players, but like I think you had Joe Mixon in there.
Oh, I think Joe Mixon is a speculative player.
I mean, I guess so, but like I am going 100% up. Wait, which team was it? I don't know what they're called. Are they called Yalson? Shane Kramer?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I felt like you drafted a much older team than I did. Yeah, Jerry Judy, Ramondre Stevenson, Keenan Allen.
I mean, I certainly considered many younger players, but the timing didn't line up for some of them.
So
I'm trying to think
ESPN.
who went right before me. Well,
I want to go through like round by round really quick because ESPN, fine folks there, gave me a C for my draft, which
yeah,
you noted.
you know, the ESPN grades are infallible. I've always said it.
They never. I'm shocked they didn't give me a B plus. I was like, I thought that was
no. I'm shocked
programmed
they
in.
didn't give me a B plus.
That's really funny. I
The
did end
C
up with
still exists. The B plus is just the peak of achievement.
the number 1 and the number 6 fantasy players by points for last year, which I think is probably a good sign. I ended up with the number. I mean, I had the 3rd pick, so I had the number 2 non-quarterback.
You didn't take a
in
wide
points.
receiver until round 4. That's interesting.
Okay, so let me walk you through this because I wanted Gibbs. When I saw that I had the 3rd pick, I was like, don't want the 3rd pick. You know, I don't like being near I want to be right in the middle because you could just control stuff so much better when you're right in the middle. But like,
Which I was.
I mean, I think you had a better draft position than me. You were 6, but
Well, so it was not me.
well, you were drafting, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is not your process at all. But so I knew I wanted to go Gibbs, assuming he was out there with that 3rd pick. If he wasn't there, I was kind of like, I guess I'll take Bijan. But it goes Jamar Chase, Saquon. I'm like, I want Jahmyr Gibbs. I had him last year. He's very fun to have on the team. Lions are good. Blah 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 blah. I was like, I'm fine with that. Not getting a receiver early. Like you took Jefferson, and there's something about Justin Jefferson
That was
makes me a little
auto pick.
nervous.
I was not around for that one.
Is that who you would have? I mean, like,
I haven't the slightest clue. I had not thought about this 1 second. I did not anticipate I was going to be drafting. I was sitting in a Men's Warehouse suit shopping.
that is hilarious. So yeah, I saw that I had the 3rd pick, and I was like, all right, that's when I go. I printed out this. You make your own rankings,
Yeah.
which is the most annoying flex of all time.
I mean, it's only a flex when I win. It wasn't a flex last year.
So I printed out the Ringers PPR fantasy rankings, where I was like, I'm just gonna keep a general sense of this. I don't know if
As a
these are
reminder, you've got 2 minutes on the clock.
statistically based, but they had Jameer 3rd. It was like Chase, Saquon, Gibbs, exactly as it went. I'm like, all right, running back. My thinking going in was I'm going to do running back and see if Brock Bowers is there with the 2nd pick and try it because I was like, I want one of quarterback or tight end to just like get it done, to have that position. Because if I don't with one of the top 3 or 4 players, I'm going to be in fucking Tyler Warren territory, or I'm going to be drafting Dak Prescott. And that was the thing that I wanted to avoid for at least one of those positions. So all of the receivers that I want are gone by the second pick. I was planning on taking Drake London with the pick right before me. Boom, Drake London goes. And I'm like, fuck. I would have been extraordinarily excited if I got Drake London. And so I kind of panicked. And I'm looking at it, and I had Bucky Irving last year, and I was like, I like Bucky Irving. I would probably rather have him than T. Higgins, Lad McConkey, somebody like that. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take 2 running backs here, and I'm just going to go super heavy on speculative wide receivers and just be like, running back is done at that point. And I knew I wanted to take a quarterback. So then I go Lamar, 3rd pick. Lamar was the number 1 fantasy scorer by 30 points overall, 50 points over the number 2 quarterback, Josh Allen. And I mean, like, when you get down to even like the number 4 like he's scored 100 more points than Jared Goff, who's like the number 5 fantasy quarterback. So if Lamar is anywhere near what he can be, I'm like, Lamar is guaranteed one of the best players. Like, you could just chalk up 25, 30 points a game. So I was like, that's done. I got to go receiver heavy. By the time you get to round 4 receivers, it is bleak out there. What were you drafting around this time period? You took Chuba Hubbard.
Well, I started wide receiver, which was not necessarily my intention, but that's where I went.
I know you don't want to talk too much about your strategy, but like, I thought Brian Thomas was a good pick.
I really just not that much strategy. I mean, like, there's some names I liked from listening to the Rear Fantasy Football Pod, and some general concepts that we share about drafting young running backs. I'm probably less excited about young wide receivers than you are.
It's different. Young wide receivers are a different era now.
I don't disagree. I'm just not as excited about it as you are.
Okay, so yeah, you went Brian Thomas, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas.
Which meant that I had to take a running back in round 3 and probably round 4 as well, where Travion Henderson went the pick ahead of me. That would have been the young running back I would have gone in on.
Oh, we all wanted Travion Henderson. When he went, it was like, I would have taken a 3rd running back.
Then I repeated it by, because it was reversed. I had the pick ahead of Aaron Robertson, who took Travion Henderson from me, and I took Ravondre Stevenson from him later in the draft.
I know, but I don't. It's one of those things where it's like, if Ramondre Stevenson is the starter, do you feel good?
Oh, Ramondre Stevenson was really good for me last year.
Okay. I will say Kyron Williams, I think he might have outscored Bucky Irving last year, and Chuba Hubbard was like a couple points behind.
Chuba Hubbard was very good for me.
Well, God, who's the other running back that they signed? They have another running back in Carolina. So
that's cool. They had another running back last year too. I took Chuba Hubbard as a handcuff last year. That's how well it worked out.
I mean, he may just go win the job, but like,
all right, we gotta move faster through this. We can't bog down on who the Carolina's other running back.
It's like Rico Dowdle is. I don't know. That's not okay.
I agree.
I go Marvin Harrison Jr. and I'm like, he's a number 1 receiver. I don't know. It's like all speculative. Calvin Ridley. I wanted Ted McMillan. I was like, I'm willing to just throw up a flyer on Ted McMillan. He goes the pick before, so I'm like, fuck it. Calvin Ridley, number 1 receiver for Cam Ward. Sure. Next pick, Emeka Egbuka. I was like, I am not leaving this draft without Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, I knew you were taking Emeka Egbuka with one of those 2 picks, and I didn't need to worry about him for whatever my subsequent pick was. I thought you would go with the second of the 2, though.
Of the round 6, where I went Egbuka and George Pickens.
Yeah. Because there were only 4 picks in between those.
Yes. Jameson Williams, David Njoku. Katie drafted Bo Nix, and I was like, have fun, Katie. I drafted an Oregon player with my 2nd pick, so I can't really say anything. But
I was preparing to take Cam Scatabo when you took him, for the record.
You went Mahomes in round 5, and I'm like, it's fine. I just don't know the Mahomes fantasy potential at this point. Like,
I don't know. I was just doing things.
You were doing things. I mean, Travis Hunter went. I was like, he was another player, but I wish Travis Hunter would have been like round 10. So then I was like, I'm going to get, if there's one player in this draft, it is going to be Emeka Egbuka. And I managed to get him round 6. And I was like, great. Rome went ahead of him. I was a little surprised by, but Chris Godwin's out for a while. George Pickens. And then I was like, all right, I have enough receivers, speculative receivers. Like, Cowboys, shoddy might just have them cooking. Like, yeah. I was like, I'm willing to go pretty heavy on the Cowboys right now. I was kind of interested in RJ Harvey, but I went George Pickens over him because I just too many running backs. Then I went Cam Scatabo. I was like, it's basically just like a deep flyer. I sort of wanted Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. I sort of wanted Caleb Johnson. Those 2 dudes went, and I was like, all right, it's Cam Scatabo time.
Yeah,
Javonte Williams.
I had Krosky Merritt in my queue, but he didn't end up getting that close to me.
And you took Evan Ingram there.
Yep.
It's like a few picks. Well, if you would have taken him, it would have even annoyed me way more.
I'm
Round
sure it
9,
would have.
Javonte Williams, starting running back for the Cowboys? Sure. Sign me up. That was one of those ones where I'm like, you could get a starter in round 9 for a team that might have a good offense. Why the hell not? And then so I'm like, I was writing down notes and I was like, I am sweating right now that somebody's going to take Emeka Egbuka ahead of me because he might be terrible, but I don't care. That is a player that I wanted on my roster. And then I was like, I'm going to take one of Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren because I took the quarterback high. I want to go speculative. And then Warren goes. So I'm like, I have to take Colston Loveland right now. A few picks after that. And we're in that territory of like, you're just kind of drafting guys at that point. Rachaad White as a handcuff for Bucky Irving. And Rachaad White actually had some.
You're very in on the Bucks offense.
It's like Bucks and Cowboys. We'll see. I mean, there has to be a little bit of nervousness about Liam Cohen being gone, but a lot of faith in Shoddy. And then Jaden Higgins, who is a second round pick for the Texans and is listed as a starter for them. And Texans, I mean, they can move the ball around. So it's kind of like, as basically I had 2 position players left. Torrey Horton had to do it. And Jaden Higgins, I was like, I feel pretty good. Despite the C from ESPN, I was like, I feel like this is enough players that I'm
What
going
did
to
those
be able
guys
to
know anyway?
I'm going to be able to find somebody, one of Marvin Harrison, Calvin Ridley, Emeka Egbuka, George Pickens, Jaden Higgins, or Torrey Horton is going to end up being a like starting caliber wide receiver. And then if Gibbs is great, Lamar is great, then I feel like everything else can be kind of figured out. But I don't know. I looked at your team and it looked pretty good too.
I mean, I just feel like I left a capable team. That's all I wanted to do.
You like the team that you ended up leaving was sort of like Seahawks style, where I was like, there is a starter at every 3. The flex as a running back in a PPR league is the only thing. Whereas like, but Jerry Jeudy could easily be. So it's like Mahomes, Kyron Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram, David Montgomery, or Jerry Jeudy. And I was like, you filled every spot on the
That was
roster.
the goal.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of questions there. So I looked at that and I was kind of like, all right, yeah, no, it's not bad. But
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean, that's why they gave you an A.
For no preparation.
I mean, I listened to the entire fantasy football podcast with Simmons, and that was like Simmons' hype on Egbuka definitely is kind of like I would have been excited about him anyway. But I'm like, if people are getting excited about Emeka Egbuka, he's gonna be number 1 on the list of players that I want. Especially if I can't get I wanted Zach Charbonnet really bad too. And it got snaked on Sharb because I was like, he's gonna be the starter by week 3 or something like that. I think Clint Kubiak's going to be really excited about how Jack Charbonnet hits holes. So,
all right, there you go.
Yeah.
On that note,
we'll see you out there.
I will see everyone on Friday because I still have real draft to do.
I'm a little fascinated to see how it goes. All right, bye.
Bye.